We are electric man. We've got electric hands. So come stand beside us and realize that the thing we must do is inspire. We're coming for you.
Hey Travis, you live?
All right, everyone, we are live. Welcome, welcome. Today's big debate topic, God. Gods? Do you believe in God? Do I believe that my mic is on and working? Yes, it is. How's everyone doing? Say hello. Smash that like button. Spam the chat. I want to see spam. Let's spam it. I'm going to spam it with something. I'm going to spam it with the loading button. You guys who are in Discord with me, help me spam this. A little milk action, a little dabbing, a little dab, little heart, spam, jack spam, little middle finger action. Okay, we're there. We got our chat rate up. Good to be with you all. We had a great discussion yesterday. I call these debates because it brings more people in, but you guys know I hate that term. God. But we have discussions here. We're going to get into it. If you have... Actually, I'm going to give you guys this. Here is our Discord link. If you don't know what Discord is, it is a... Thanks for the spams, guys. Good shit. If you don't know what Discord is, it is a voice and video chat software that also has text chat, but it allows us to talk with each other around the world and discuss topics like this one. Yesterday we had a discussion about the trucker convoy protests, and it was great. If you didn't catch that one, you can find it on this channel. It was the most recent video that we did, and now we're here. We're going to be talking about gods. It's the great debate today, and I look forward to hearing from everyone. I'm going to, this is going to be much more casual setup, this one. This time, I'm going to just kind of start with, I think, Jack, and then we'll let things kind of organically build from there, and I will be keeping an eye on the conversation, but I'm going to mute myself for a moment and do all of my shares just so everyone in Pangburn knows that we are live. All right, Jack, it's all yours, my brother.
Yeah, so basic, like really easy start for me. I'm how do you get exactly? Agnostic atheist. I'm pretty positive when it comes to the question of is there not a God. I just don't really care on that. I don't know. And if, I also don't believe when there's a proposition made that there is one. There hasn't been enough evidence for me, and I don't really see, based on anything that's been brought up or, studied up to this point, that has any way to show it. I think that belief in God can be useful in certain ways. Like, I think that it brings a lot of people, different versions of... It brings to a lot of people different kinds of emotions, It makes people feel better about a lot of things, allows people to cope with, some of, the harsher realities of the world. I think that gods have been used to like explain things in the past, and they've had utility before, so it's not like entirely bad. I think that the things that have been born out of the gods, like religions, are generally pretty corrupt, and although have been in the past, utility for humanity to, build off of and go further. I think today it's just gotten kind of the point where I feel like we've gotten to the near obsoleteness of, religion and kind of God and all that. It's been famously said that God was dead before. I don't know if that was exactly true then, but if anything, he's, gasping for air currently when it comes to God as a concept. The triad of the Abrahamic religions, as far as I'm concerned, is all silly. I think out of everybody, the Christians are pretty much the worst out of that bunch, and then Judaism isn't so bad, and then Islam is incredibly crazy, but has a better kind of story, I think, for it. The Eastern philosophies I'm not exactly in tune with as much. I know a little bit about them, but not enough to like go into or talk about. But those are my base feelings and stuff like that, and we can get into more about.
I'll have to disagree with you on the order of religions from worst to best. I'd say Islam worst, Judaism second worst, and then Christianity's third worst. So Christianity being the least worst, Islam being the most worst.
What do you mean by worse, Mace?
Oh, when I'm talking about worse, I mean
being more problematic, being less compatible with Western society.
And do you think? Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
I was just gonna say, hey, sorry for joining late. Couldn't it be viewed though that it's not just the religion, it's the practitioner, the radical abortion clinic bombing. Okay, some people are really anti-abortion even though they're secular, so that's a bad example. The homosexual killing, Baptist from the 90s especially, is, that stereotypical example, has more in common with a radical Muslim who's looking to commit a suicide bombing than he does with a Muslim, lefty, working in downtown Boston and goes to, temple once every couple months. It seems, it seems like we pass these big judgments about religions when it's really about the practitioner and the individual group within the tribe, if that makes any sense.
Does anyone in the room believe in the existence of God? Anybody believe in the existence of God or gods?
I'll bite, Travis. I'm an atheist.
I think.
Okay, let's let Docio. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I think. Again, I think a lot of people would be mad at me for saying that I do, because I feel like when I end up giving my description of what I mean by God, people are like, "Oh, you don't actually believe in like this supernatural type of guy with a big long beard that kind of decided everything." I don't believe in that type of sense, but I do have a spiritual belief in a thing that I have no reason to believe in other than by faith, and I call that God. It's like a faith thing, I do have faith that there is something. Let's just say.
All right, who wants to take a stab
when
at
you
that?
break it down?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you break it down, what you're describing, I understand what you mean. I was there once when I first started deconverting from Protestant Christianity. What you're describing is a state of agnostic theism. Yeah, and some folks that are in the atheist community, especially the people who have never been there before, will get very nasty about this and accuse you of, not being able to let go. And meanwhile, where your brain is, if I had to guess, probably a spot where, it seems like there's a lot in this world, in this universe, that would just be spinning out of control. How is everything quote unquote in order without a higher power. Am I anywhere close to where you are?
Um, Right, no. It's not that I like it's not that I derive like a sense of understanding from this like higher power. I don't know if higher power is the right way to say it. I'm borrowing my religious language from other people, right? I was never a theist initially, right? Like I grew up an atheist and I still somewhat consider myself an atheist, right? I think I'm more on the agnostic theist side, like you said there. But I think more of my where my belief comes from is I've had many experiences that I've had no way of understanding um, through the normal like objective methods of understanding emotions and experiences that I had faced. So I realized to understand these experiences, I had to take like a new point of view, and that new point of view is a somewhat religious point of view. You know, it's based in faith.
Hi, what did I miss?
Hey, we're talking about, we're doing the big God debate today.
Mm.
Well, how about you, Max? Do you believe in the existence of gods?
No comment. I like to keep that stuff personal to myself. Sorry to dodge the question
Oh,
there.
okay. Interesting.
I'm actually usually on that side too. I actually don't like discussing it because I often feel that when I talk about this with other people, I'm being somewhat ingenuine. Like I'll judge my words before I say them. And there's like a little voice inside of me that is saying, "Why'd you say that? You don't really mean that." It's like I'm trying to convince you of something that I already have I've already been convinced of, and so it's a weird mental gymnastics that I do when I talk about this topic.
You're more, dare I say, what's the term I'm looking for? Help me with this, Travis. A more sensitive person than other people here. There are some people who, just don't give a fuck what other people think because we look at it as a standpoint of these are people that I don't like, don't care to impress, don't care what they think about me, and then there's times where you do, right?
I want to say hello to Naomi. Welcome. We're talking about gods today and the belief in gods. Naomi, do you believe in the existence of gods? If you're new to Discord, you do have to hit the unmute button or else we can't hear you. But feel free not to say anything if you're just here to listen. Any other takes? Lexicon, what's your take on the God topic?
I'm also one of these. I prefer not to talk about it. I would rather not be the catalyst to someone either losing or gaining faith.
Interesting. Well, this is taking it interesting.
May I jump in
Uh,
here?
sorry,
Yeah. Go ahead,
I
Aaron.
had the reason for that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think listening to these types of debates are important. But the paradigm structure I went down was an analysis of truth, and it's sort of like an objective understanding to some extent. And I don't think hearing that without coming to it on your own, it's almost like a vaccine to never understanding it. You gotta figure it out for yourself.
Steve,
That's interesting.
Yeah. Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh.
What do you got?
I'm a theological non-cognitivist, also known as an atheist. But people like Lexicon and the other person who said that they prefer to keep it to themselves, those are the kinds of people that make me realize just how little I actually respect the rest of the people who believe in God or gods, because even as someone who feels like the word God doesn't really have any meaning because no one can seem to actually define what the fuck that word means, it's a catch-all term for something, and it has a different meaning to whomever you ask about it. At the end of the day, with no clear answers in sight, to me at least, it doesn't matter what you believe. The issue I have is when you think that what you believe is so concrete and you think you know so much that you have to convince other people to to jump on your bandwagon. That's where I have a problem with it. If you want to believe in a God, you have every right in the book to do so. Where I have an issue is when you start trying to pull other people in. So to hear someone say that they would rather keep that to themselves, I know it doesn't mean anything, but not only do I have a shit ton of respect for you, I wish more people who believe in God thought the way you did. Whether they do or not, I wish it would just be look, that's between me and me. I just wish that that's the way it was for more people.
Right. That's a hard thing to discuss, I think, because I know some people that are missionaries, and you'll ask them about like their devotion and why it is that they're doing this whole crazy thing about trying to convince other people of their quote unquote God. And they'll usually, the reason that they're trying to convince other people is how important it was to them once they became convinced, right? They're trying, I think there's this, and I mean, I don't know how legitimate this makes their missions, right? And maybe the road to hell is paved with good intentions, you know? But these people usually have like deep personal experiences that they're trying to share, often like bringing people out of suicide or things like that, you know?
I want to get in here, but also like sometimes the God that they come to believe in is commanding them to share the word, right? Or there's something within the mythos that makes them believe that other people are going to hell who they're not able to convince, right?
Yeah,
or that are in hell.
Docio, I think what you're describing, and this is how I look at it, is it provides context. It doesn't make it okay, especially some of that really negative behavior, but it does put into context what people are doing. At the end of the day, this person, my fiance's family are all ardent right-wing Christians, or I would say her parents are, and some of her siblings. One of her brother-in-laws is an Anglican priest. Don't get me started. They're convinced that I am doomed to the fiery pits of hell. Now, I'm not convinced that there is any hell. The best I can tell based on evidence is I die, lights off, push the power button, unplug the power cord. Discharge all capacitors.
No, that's not as far as I can tell. That if we're talking about the afterlife, I think that too. You know, I'm not. I think a lot of people, and this is to bring up the point that you were. Or that, I don't know if it was you, but someone was making that the problem with religion usually is not the religion, but rather the practitioners and their interpretations and their insistencies and all these things of how they go about using this quote unquote religion to their benefit, you know? And I think one of the great like mishaps of at least Christianity is that people have this idea that when you die, you either go to the good place or the bad place. But I mean, at least in my non-thorough reading of the Bible, that is not at all the interpretation that I got from what heaven and hell was from reading those books. You know, like to me, it was very much so a type of where we are right now can be heaven or it can be hell, depending on how you act. And you can bring both into being if you act a certain way, right? Like if you just go around raping and killing people, you live in hell because everybody's just dying and getting raped. But if you go around helping and feeding the poor, you live in heaven, you know? Like that's more my interpretation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Quick thing, you guys.
May I please say something?
Yeah, Aaron, I got a quick thing before. I love that you guys are chatting on Discord. Please move the text chat to the live video stream on YouTube so that we can capture it in the recording, because these are very important, comments you guys are making, and I want to make sure everyone who's watching is able to see what you guys are saying. Just make sure you have the YouTube stream muted if you are also in the Discord chat here. But yeah, Aaron, go ahead, man.
Oh yeah, I need to say this. Like, Dozio, holy shit, dude. You just opened my eyes to a perspective I didn't even think about. Holy shit, dude.
Sure, yeah, no, that's a good one.
That actually makes the most sense. However, here's
Oh,
my
boy.
issue. Just to further elaborate on what I was saying, bro. Now, you can call me a little bit cynical, and maybe I have my reasons, but
You're wrong. I mean,
a lot of the idea of the belief in God, especially going back to the idea of it not so much being the concept, but the way people practice it, is this idea of manipulation. Because let's just be real. You can't tell me that one of the core tenets of talking about a heaven and a hell in an afterlife where you burn for eternity isn't to manipulate and to scare people into doing what you think they should be doing. And
Right,
the problem that I have is that it's almost like the more people you can try to convert to believe what you believe, the more justified you can say you are in what you believe. It's one of the habits of human beings. We want to be surrounded by people who agree with us to make our beliefs feel more justified. And I think that something that has so many notes of manipulation, just trying to get other people to act the way you think they should act, is the reason why I say, I don't give a damn what you think your mission is. If you want to believe in a God, please, if it helps you get you through your life, do not try to drag somebody else into that shit. Let them come up with that on their own.
Okay, Aaron, thank you. Yeah, Lex, we'll get your comment next, but then after that, I want to go to James B. Unless James has changed his position on God, I believe he is a believer in God. But Lexicon, give us your comments.
Even back when I was a believing Christian, I drew a delineation between religion and belief.
Right.
I don't like
I think
talking
that's
about the
important.
topic. I don't like talking about the topic of whether or not God exists, but I will talk all day and sideways about religion and how it is terrible. Even from the Christian perspective, there are many indications that Jesus was very much against the concept of religion. Or organized belief is not a good idea, unless it's being organized around a method rather than reaffirmation based on people around you.
Right. Just a quick quip to like answer what Aaron's saying. I think, just like you said, I mean, in my opinion, all, if not all, most of the issues that like you're talking about manipulation and about all these like things, I consider those mishaps of the church, not of the faith, you know? To me, the faith is like a very personal like type of narrative that I've got going on, right? But this idea of like selling tickets to heaven, or like, oh, you're gonna burn in hell, or swim in pools in heaven if you do this or don't do that, that to me reeks of the church, you know? And I don't mean the church when I say faith, right? I mean the opposite of that, actually.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Docio. Let's go to James. James, how's it going, brother? I assume you are a seething, child-eating atheist now?
No, not yet.
How's it going, man?
Don't worry, we'll get you there.
I'm happy to hear your voice.
Yeah. It's good. I have a little bit of time, so I figured I'd pop in.
Right on.
Enjoy the conversation. You guys will find that I'm probably too much of my disdain and to yours, right there on the fence in more ways than one, because I've been speaking with you guys for so long, and every person is different, so it's great.
Yeah.
So I guess
beautifully.
I guess the general question here is: are we saying do gods exist, or are we talking about the utility of some kind of metaphysical truth associated with religion and the idea of gods?
It can be
and goddesses?
any topic you want to touch on, James. We're just generally talking about God and gods today. Very wide open. Yeah.
So
That's
from
a very prescient point that you made, though, James.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Hopefully, I can make a few more points that may add some nuance, some interesting nuance to this conversation. So one, can you prove a God exists or gods and goddesses exist? And I really don't think it's possible. At some level, we're operating in two different spheres, and we kind of start to see those spheres start to break very early on in our philosophical thought, dating all the way back to Plato. And that's kind of been the challenge, and we've been trying to reconcile that through multiple means, through different religions, different monastic orders, so on and so forth. And so, to make the God claim, that is a pretty significant thing you have to do, and there's a burden of proof that's going to be very, very difficult to overcome. You can use anecdotal evidence to a point, but I think that you have to look at your epistemological standards, and then some grace probably has to be given to people who are using certain epistemological standards based off of what information they have. So that's that. Now, from the perspective of religion and the metaphysical truths that may inhabit them, I would say there's something definitely there. Now it gets very loose and very deepity based, I think, and it's where I think it makes a lot of things uncomfortable, because it can be related to a lot of different things. And one of the things I'll kind of equate this to is leadership studies. Okay, like leadership studies is pretty much right in line with kind of some of these metaphysical truths associated with religion. And there's definitely some utility in having religion and these gods and goddesses. Now, there's a few things I'll point out. Just kind of, I've only been here for a few moments, so I don't know all the things. I'd be very careful to say that religion by itself is just evil. I would sit here and be very careful in saying, yes, does it have unfortunate side effects? Yes. Well, anything can become, in some regards, a religious-like structure, religious/mythic structure, depending on your interpretation of events. And in a world of facts, historical facts mainly, it's going to be very hard to stand up to, well, this happened here. Well, guess what also happened? X happened. So a great example is many of you probably that the Dark Ages were somehow Christianity's fault. I would sit here and point to you and say, not really. There's multitude of factors that go on to the Dark Ages, and one of those major, again, this is an example of the importance of tradition. Christianity pretty much held European society together after the fall of Rome, because there was a major power vacuum in some regard. It became the overarching narrative in Europe while multiple kingdoms fought each other for power. So I'd be very careful to say that the religious tradition in and of itself is bad.
All right.
Now,
thanks. I just want to give people a chance. There's a lot of meat there.
Sure.
I want to just say hi to Juju, Corvo.
What's up, Dune?
What's up? Bruno joined us.
Thank you.
Welcome, guys. Well, why don't we, because you guys hold your questions for James. I'm sure you guys have questions for James. Let's hear from Juju. Juju, where do you sit on the God conversation? Do you find God to be a useful concept, or do you believe in the existence of a literal God? Where do you sit?
Actually, I think Corvo might want to answer that.
Yeah, sure. Or
right
Corvo.
now.
Yeah, whichever. Yeah.
So it depends on the modality of use. Like, there could be usefulness in a construction of a society. It could be usefulness as a psychological coping mechanism. It can be useful as to create and justify epistemically like a moral structure. Then there are uses for it, of course. So which phase then becomes, because it's also going to be subjective. You say it's objective, like objective morality. Well, then you would have to epistemically kind of demonstrate which faith is the correct one. And I don't think you can. So you can't epistemically. So you can't, as it deals with information, we can't get there. So that's why we have literally the word faith. We can't get to literally demonstrating the truthfulness or the information capability of demonstrating the truth of faith. But we can make ontological argument for faith.
Yeah.
There's several ones I think are interesting, like Anselm's ontological argument. There's a
It's a
cosmological
bad
argument.
argument.
It's an interesting argument. I like the
It's interesting,
Avicenna.
but it's bad.
So I like the Avicenna, which he constructed an ontological argument which deals with contingencies. Like, for example, every fact is contingent on some other fact, is some contingent on some other fact.
Yeah.
So the question is, where does this contingency end? And then you would say, if you're a person of faith, that the contingency have a final ultimate source, which is what Avicenna tried to say.
Yeah, that is specifically the notion of the self-cause cause, right? So like everything goes back to the idea of self-cause cause.
Right, but
in faith, right?
So the argument you can make to that is, well, as we know information, we know that they are contingent upon each other, but what if we find out later that it doesn't deal with the final pool of contingencies which everything comes from? What if these facts loop through each other? Like, this is dependent on this, and then this depend on this, and from that loop somehow energy is created, or some other facts arise. We don't know that yet.
Corvo, would you describe yourself as a Gnostic or agnostic atheist?
I would probably describe myself as agnostic, kind of, very kind of believing in God.
Oh, okay. Are you willing to claim, do you know that gods don't exist as much as you know that leprechauns don't exist?
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand your epistemological standard of truth. Yeah.
Exactly. So there was a point of epistemology. I'm not going to sit here and say, I know for sure because... I know for sure leprechauns don't exist because that's absurd. No, I'm not going to say I know as much about them two in the strict information wise. But yeah.
And I do want to get Juju's. Thanks, Corvo. I do want to get Juju's. What do you think about God's Juju?
I actually am going to have to go in just a minute. My neighbor's coming over.
Okay.
I'm really sorry.
No worries. That's all good.
Hey,
if you guys, because we do have lots,
that's
bringing
unacceptable.
me dinner. I'm so excited.
You guys, just because we have
literally bringing me dinner.
Thanks, Juju. Because we have lots of people in the room, please mute if you're not speaking. So please do mute in between. Does anyone have any challenges or questions for James while we have him? Because James doesn't have a lot of time. Andy, Scott.
I do want to say, Jimothy, man, I'm fucking glad to see you here, dude. It's been forever. Glad to see you're here. What is the specific question that we're talking about right now?
There is it's a general topic, but James said a whole bunch of things. Scott, if you don't have a response to James, I'm going to move to someone who does have a response while we still have him.
Totally.
For anyone,
I gotta go. Nice meeting you, Pangburn.
Yeah, you too. Welcome to the Discord server. Does anyone else have any questions? James, is a believer, but he thinks demonstrating this, is might be impossible. Do you guys think? James.
I got a good question for him.
Yeah, go ahead, Tosio.
Just to bring it back to what we were talking about before. Would you say that you're convinced enough of this faith to try to bring other people into it?
That's a good question. So from my limited perspective, I'd be very careful of doing that. Just like I would be very careful of deconstructing someone else's faith, right? Because I don't believe in, it's not, I guess this is just a fundamental belief structure for me. I don't believe in convincing people. I believe people convince themselves, right? And so from that perspective, I would want to, I'd offer resources, conversation, and lead, I guess, some by example. And if they believe that or they convince themselves of that, then fine. So I don't know if that answers your question outright.
It actually does. It actually does. You brought an adage to me that I remember now. How did it go? A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
It's also a very minnow way
Doesn't
of looking
actually
at
answer
it.
the question though. The question is, do you believe so strongly that you would convince other people if you
Right.
could?
I think the answer to that is no. Right.
I mean, that answers, it does answer that question, because so even if I don't believe it, or something like that, like I would just flip the script and say, well, should I deconstruct somebody because this is demonstrably false? That's not entirely evident to me. Like they need to convince themselves and go through that journey on their own.
Right. Sure. So, what are your opinions on mission work? On, like, for example, people going out to Africa and preaching faith?
I mean, don't send them to Ethiopia, since Ethiopia is already a Christian nation in that regard. I think it's
right,
kind
but
of
I think
ridiculous.
like that's a big part of the last of the Second Testament, right? Of the New Testament, like
Yeah. You need to go out. I don't have an
faith,
issue.
right?
Again, I
Give
don't
the
have
good
an
news or
issue
something like that.
sending. I don't have an issue with sending missionaries. I don't have an issue with evangelical work in that regard.
Well, that's
again,
kind of
I have an issue with
like
convincing.
they're telling people like, hey, believe this thing, like.
Okay, but say I can still, me being in this conversation could still be classified as evangelical work, right? With my approach.
Right, but I'm questioning that specific approach of going to another country. It's because we were talking about it before, right? Right before you got here, actually, we were kind of discussing. A lot of people were asked the question, "Do you believe in God?" And kind of myself included, not really actually. And a few other people gave the answer of, "I would rather not discuss that," or it was, I'm not giving you verbatim what they said, but it was more of the lines of, that's an idea I keep to myself, or one that I don't try to preach. Let's say.
Yeah. I mean, there's a fine line there, and I don't have a very clean answer. I do think that mission work can be useful. I do think that, and when I say mission work can be useful, in my mind, it's you're still going to a community, you're still going to another part of the world, you're leading by example, helping build that community, but on the expectation that people convert, that I think becomes dubious. I think.
Okay, I like that. I like that. There's no expectation of them converting them. That's what you would say.
That doesn't make any sense. One second. That doesn't make any sense. How would you even? Why would you go there if you have no expectation for them converting?
Because you want them.
Charity.
Yeah, it's charity. Yeah, because you just want it.
Yeah, see this guy in the guy in the chat.
I'm just going to throw it out there, not religion related.
A really good comment that I think is cool. So,
Jack.
I'm interested in it.
Yeah, Jack.
Religion?
Let's let Andy go, and then we'll bring in Jack, or then we'll get Scott, and then we'll bring in Jack's question. Go ahead, Andy.
Wasn't Al talking though?
Oh, sorry, Bruno. Sorry, Andy. Let's let Bruno finish. Yeah, thanks, Don. Bruno, you can finish first, and then.
No, it's cool. Actually, it's sort of sorted out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Andy, go ahead. Then we'll go Scott.
So it's a great question, and I'm not defending mission work because I personally find it disgusting now, especially with a lot of the conduct that some mission organizations commit and use. But again, context is important. When we look at, sorry, my dog is barking in the background. When we look at the context of a salesperson going out, they go out, yes, assuming that they're going to knock on enough doors to get somebody to sign with them. But they're not knocking on every door, assuming that person is going to sign with them. It's a quantity over quality thing. If that makes sense.
Is if they're not using high pressure sales tactics as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, which some mission organizations.
I think there's an important difference between selling and preaching the faith, or at least doing the mission work, right? I at least from what I wanted to believe, from what James was saying, I wanted, or in my mind, it was this idea of giving with absolutely zero expectation of return. only every single bit that comes is extra, right? Like a zero expectation, not like the general of like, oh well, I might not always get a convinced person, but some percentage of it. Right?
So let's
I don't think
go.
there's making
I want to go to Scott, but first, just remind you guys, keep engaging in the YouTube chat. We got lots of great comments. Jack, you're gonna read one for us. That's great. But Scott, you go ahead first.
Yes, so James, this is sort of a question I try to pose to people. What do you think is more important with faith? Is this idea that you will be able to continue living after death? Or is it the idea of saying like this is the way we need to behave in life through like the church's teaching, so we're good to each other, right? So what's more important to you? Is it the notion that you'll be able to continue living after death, or is it of saying, hey, like we need to behave this way to have like a good life in the world that we exist, right?
I think there's kind of two questions there.
Yeah.
Well, let me put my I know I put my finger on one of them, and I kind of do it with a kind of a joke. If you believe that you live this life and that you go to heaven and all other fun stuff, and that is your only motivation for doing those things, I don't think you're really ready to die. And that's kind of there's a literature behind that in some regards.
Yes.
Where it's like some people die and they go to heaven and they learn to play golf, like they do all the things they could never do and they live forever, and then they're finally bored and they realize, oh well, it's like, are you ready to die now? And so that's kind of where I would go with that. Now I don't think it really answers your question. I don't really think it's wise to go down that path. Now, do people do that? Yes. Is it potentially useful? Maybe.
Perhaps, yeah.
There's definitely a use to kind of seeing the end in mind, right? And creating, I think, Dazio was alluding to the kingdom of heaven, kind of that idea earlier. I think I heard that.
Yeah, the Sermon on the Mount.
Well, the kingdom of heaven is it's like a state of consciousness, right?
Well, yeah, no, I'm referring to how it was referred to in that specific.
Yeah, and so
I think at some point, and again, when I think of God, I'm not thinking this like, oh, it's Jesus Christ up there, right there, like just somehow phased into reality. I'm like putting all together all these people that for some reason or another thought that there was life after death, right? Like why would someone think that in general, even before like this idea of Christ or any specific type of God, a very unspecific type of general claim of what it would mean to live after life, right? And I've forgone, right? I've been at some point I was like very like, oh, it has to mean that objectively you're going to live after, right? But at some point, I'm not sure when, I gave up that objective idea, and I started to think about it in a way of, well, what does it mean to symbolically live after you die? I think
there's definitely an idea there that you're dialing on.
Yeah. I think there are certainly many effects. In fact, I think you can point this to specifically being evolution, right? Like what lives on is a specific type of thing, and what doesn't live on is another specific type of thing, evolutionarily speaking, and in that same sense, there's an idea of some things living forever and some things not, right? Like some things being in heaven, some things being in hell. I don't know. Maybe I'm like clawing at straws here. But
well, hang on. Well, I guess the point that I would make is there's definitely some metaphorical backbones to this, right? That you can go down and never actually end in a place after death.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And so there's a few different ways to look at it. One of the ways I struggle with often is looking at it from a legacy perspective. you know, trying to do all the right things. Like, will you leave the right legacy? That's kind of an idea of heaven.
I do want.
To me, I
That's actually
find that
exactly
a strange
almost exactly.
position, right? Well, to me, I find that a strange position, right? So, like, where were you before you were born?
In the places where people manifested me. Look, for example, I would say that at a certain point, look, I think of it this way. Look,
what does it even mean? Like you had.
Well, let me try to unpack it a little.
Let's let Docio answer. Let's let him clarify.
Yeah, let me try to unpack it a little in the way that I would think about it. I don't know if it's going to be useful to me, to you, but I hope it is useful to me. Maybe. Imagine that there was all sorts of people that are tall, people that are short, right? People that are a lot like you and people that are not like a lot like you, right? And imagine that everything that you've done in the specific order that you've done it, someone's already done it, okay? Someone before you already did that. That person, in my mind, is you, because they've done everything you've done, right? They've had the same experience in one way or another.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Sure.
I do want to go to Jack. Jack, you had an interesting comment that you read. Let's listen up. Let's see if your mic is better. You can turn your mic up.
Yeah,
okay, there you go.
The thing off. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, God damn. So let me see. At least from my point of view, this is interesting. It says, Mystified J in that chat said, religion is good at subverting our instinctual inclinations for belonging and purpose, much like we hacked a wolf's prey drive to extinct a sheep, border collies. So I think that's an interesting thing, because when it comes to at least the Abrahamic religion, especially Christianity, I kind of think that the backbone of that entire religion, because it was created, at least again from my point of view, people, was to subvert and control a lower class of people at the time. You know, it's easier to have control of people when they believe that, you know, the weak will eventually grow and become stronger, and, you know, the chaff amongst the wheat, and, you know, Jesus, you know, turn the other cheek so that, you know, the master can strike the other one and you still don't do anything about it.
I think you're massively misinterpreting.
No, I want to say, I'm not. Hold on a second. I think you can think I'm massively misinterpreting. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not worried about. But I think that it's interesting. The thing that he says it in is because I think that humanity generally does have a natural inclination to come together as people, and I think that an interesting, a weird idea that separates us a lot of the time when it comes to this is the idea that, you know, my made up belief system about something that we can't prove is different than yours, and I think that it's an interesting barrier that holds up between things. I also think that because of this, we have become different than we would have had we not had this weird thing hacked into us, this weird idea of, you know, religion and borders separating us mentally.
Yeah.
Anyone
else? It's funny you imply the word hack. Hack implies hacker. Like, what do you mean hacked into?
Well, even with the idea of like it's
humans are the hacker. Humans are the ones that would have created the idea.
We hacked ourselves.
Go ahead, Scott.
Hold on. Like even with this notion of like we've been hacked to like believe this. Like even the notion of Christianity is only 2,000 years old. Like, and you do recognize humans have lived for fucking millions of years, and all of a sudden, like, we're trying to say like what happens in the last 2,000 years. This is what really fucking matters. Get the fuck out of here! Like that's nonsensical bullshit.
But that's his catchphrase. Go ahead, Andy. Here, Docio, let's let Andy get in, and then we'll move it around a bit.
Yeah. Sorry,
I mean, big. You're right, but you're wrong. You're right. Christianity is a concept of only a couple thousand years old, but the stories from the Bible are clearly, in many cases, stolen from even older mythology. But mythology never fucking changes. And I don't care whether it's biblical mythology or the concept of the fire-breathing dragon. There's these concepts that run back tens of thousands of years, and it might be because there's something to them, or it might just be that they're just fucking. Let's
let Scott. Let's let Scott.
A bunch of common denominators all coming together to add together.
We'll let Scott respond, and then I want to get Don in.
You're right. There are certain things that have like maintained, but that doesn't mean that like the entire stories of all these things have maintained over 4,000 years. These stories have changed drastically over 4,000 years. There might be some sort of like thread running through those stories that ties them all together, that makes them like a unified ideology. But the notion of these stories, religious stories, have changed so often and so frequently and so much over thousands of years. That there's nothing that's actually true about any of these things. It's like the idea of like Shakespeare, like Shakespeare wrote many stories, and he never wrote anything that was 100% true, but he wrote things that were like within the realm of truth, of like this
they're touching on something real. I just want to I just want to quickly say that James B., who's been taking questions about his God belief, I did want to mention that he's got his own podcast called The Meaning Forge that you can find on YouTube. So do check that out, because I think he runs a good conversation.
Please.
Can I ask James a question?
Things like this.
The Meaning Forge is awesome, James.
And and guys, just a reminder, mute yourself when you're not talking, because we do have a lot of people in the room. Let's go to by the way, everyone on YouTube, please do drop your thoughts in the comment section. We are reading them, and we will read some of them out to the room. So keep commenting. Go ahead, Don.
A few things I've heard that I just want to give my take on is this idea, again, like we were talking about stories and how these stories are old and they preceded the Bible. Well, we're talking specifically like Northern Semitic stories. As you go to different parts of the world, the stories do change. And one of the traps that we have to be careful not to fall in is the trap Jung fell into. And this trap was looking at these stories and assigning them Western archetypes like trickster and the shadow, all that stuff that he did. What he did is he used his own lens, his own history, his own psychodynamic tensions within himself, and projected them into the stories. And as when you go to the people who tell these stories, they have very different meanings from them and very different analyses from them. So let's not fall into that trap where we project our own internal world and attribute that into the stories, rather than taking care to really place our close attention to who wrote it and why they wrote it. Yes. The second thing I want to talk about when we talk about metaphysical concepts of God and the like, a lot of this also comes out of what I would say mistranslation. And this is what I mean. When Westerners went and talked to the Eastern world about what they conceive as God, right? They had their deities, which they called gods, and they had their concept of the thing that's infinite, and the Westerns also called that God. But in their languages, they make a distinction between the two. That's one thing. And the second thing is, I think it's extremely clear to notice that these religions, especially like Judaism or Akhenatenism, which is one of the first monotheistic religion in Egypt, are directly related to laws, how to live one's life, and of course they deal with control. This is not like a statement that's controversial. It's just the fact of the matter. Religions were not separate from the law of the time, and when we look at modern society, if we start viewing our modern societies through the lens of a civil religion, we start seeing parallels where we have different stories and myths. For example, George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. That never happened. But to a historian, they can either look at what actually happened, or they can look at what do the people think actually happened. And these are two really important things to consider.
Galileo dropping the balls from the Tower of Pisa, that never happened either. So
yeah.
Don, I think it's onto Travis. Don's onto something, and it's a question that I'd like to ask Jim. Don, I'm going to try to repeat what you said without misrepresenting and getting it accurate. That at the end of the day, these religions are based on a way to live your life in a mechanism of control. Correct? Did I get that right, Don?
That's a certain part of it, right? Religions,
Okay.
especially real quick, when we look at religions, and especially when we look at historically, we look at religions, we tend to take an entire work of people and say, oh, this is that religion. Well, they had academics, they had like shamans, they had lay people, lawyers, who all kind of looked into this one standard book or idea of the time or the stories to make their arguments or whatever it might be. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The question I would ask for Jim is, I generally agree with your concept, Don. Jim, how can you make a statement like that Christianity isn't responsible for the Dark Ages when the tool that the monarchies, that the Roman Catholic Church, the papacy, used to control the people were rooted in their theology? I don't think that's not pretty well documented, and we can go and get into this special case of special pleading of well, they were perverted. Well, that the best I can tell, all of Christianity is perverted, along with any other religion. So how do you go and defend a statement that Christianity is not responsible, that Catholicism specifically is not responsible for the Dark Ages, when that was the tool of the nobility to keep everybody else?
Can I try to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead, Doolittle.
Yeah, so I would put to you that a dominant religion at the time was not responsible for the Dark Ages, but actually climate change was. And what happened during the Dark Ages with regards to climate is that we had what's called a Little Ice Age. You can look up the Little Ice Age and what happened. And much of Europe became much colder. Growing seasons shortened. People became hungry and starving. And during that period of time, people couldn't devote the amount of resources to things like schooling and arts and science that they could when we have now, or like we had at the time of the Romans, where growing seasons were much longer. It took a lot less effort to grow enough food to feed your society. You didn't have things like, before the Dark Ages, the Justinian plague, which killed, well, I don't know, what was it, 3/4 of the people in Europe. Basically, there was a climate catastrophe and there was a population catastrophe that was caused by actual disease that was directly linked to the Ice Age, to the Little Ice Age, and that's what caused the collapse of civilization, or at least the collapse of the knowledge of our civilization. And it was only through people who were religious, the monks, who laboriously copied and passed down the text through hand copying, that all that knowledge was even preserved through the Ice Age.
So I'm going to politely push back. The Little Ice Age as an event, no doubt that happened. It's been proven.
Okay.
We'll say that word, anthropologically. Is that the word I'm looking for? I think it is.
Yeah.
No doubt whatsoever.
Anthropomorphically.
We're talking about an event.
Are you talking about a different period of time?
No. You're talking about an event that it has been shown to have occurred from I want to say it was like 1250 or 1350, más o menos. I know it's a 100-year time frame, but that lasted from call it the 1300s all the way until the 1800s, when the sea level started to rise. So I don't see how you could go and say that that's the cause of the Middle Ages, when it happened well into the time period that's referred to as the Dark Ages, and it lasted well after the Dark Ages, the medieval period.
Well, I think you have to be clear about what you mean by the Dark Ages.
medieval period as defined by the history textbooks. I don't have the years.
I mean, but that's a pretty wide, everything from the fall of Rome, which could have ended as late as 600 AD.
Okay, so if we want to go technical, I would suppose I would go and point to the medieval ages as defined by Britannica, as being in or around 500 AD to in or around 1500 AD when the Renaissance started taking off. And the Renaissance would eventually lead to the classical period. So you're talking about understand the what you're describing, that little ice age happened and it sucked to deal with, would have been a lot easier without religion. Just saying. It lasted through medieval period. It started halfway into the medieval period. It lasted through the medieval period, the Renaissance, the classical period, and into the Industrial Revolution. How do we go and blame the medieval ages just on that alone?
I didn't say just on that, but I think it's a predominant cause. I think the carrying capacity of the environment is probably the most important factor for the growth and flourishing of civilizations.
No, the fact that you had nobility who thought that they could go and take away up to 90% of the crops from their poor fiefdom farmers because God said so is more of a problem. I think that where you and I diverge here is that I agree that that this cold snap that we're describing here definitely had an impact on Europe. It's well documented. Absolutely, totally agree. But this could have been made a lot better if you had benevolent leaders versus leaders who are high on the power that the papacy gave them through their Bible. That's all I'm pointing out.
If we look at
go ahead, Don, and then I'd like to move the mic around. Go ahead, Don.
If you look at the historical context of this idea of divine right of kings, we're looking at families that came from Roman generals after the fall of Rome, who controlled specific provinces in Southern Europe and Eastern Europe, and it was basically legitimate power that they had as generals, and they kind of like, hey, listen, so while the fall of the Roman Empire happened, we're going to keep protecting you, but you guys are going to still be responsible to, paying taxes, this land is technically ours, etc. And the idea was the power that we have isn't one because, we're legitimately the rulers of this area. It was legitimate power, which the people consented to illegitimate power to change the rights of king in a matter of like 600 to 700 years. That's kind of marks the beginning of the kingship, feudal lord serfs era. The transition from generals who owned these lands and provinces after the fall of the Roman Empire to somehow them being commanded by God to have them.
Let's get Jason Torn in. Jason, do you have any thoughts on what you've heard? What are your general positions on God?
Yeah, thanks. I'm an atheist. I don't think there's any supporting evidence to suggest that a God or gods exist. I think there's, I also consider myself a naturalist, so I prescribe to like methodological naturalism. I don't know if I'm a physicalist, but I kind of categorize myself as a naturalist. So, and I think there's lots of arguments, philosophical and scientific, around that topic. But I did just want to say, I thought that the discussion around the Dark Ages was quite interesting. Not to belabor that topic, but my perspective is, I know you guys were talking about the Little Ice Age. I think it's the Little Ice Age and the fall of the Roman Empire, the combination of those things. Now, whether religiosity had some, like if religion was not involved, it would have been worse or better. I don't know. But I think it is a common perspective amongst academics that the Little Ice Age had a considerable effect, which led to the Europe kind of falling into the Dark Ages. So that's my perspective.
I also agree with that. I think it had to do more with material conditions rather than ideological ones.
Yeah, right on.
Good point.
All
Yeah,
I'm
no,
trying to say
I'm not gonna disagree that ideological conditions are a contributing factor or in fact an agonist that makes something better or worse.
Yeah,
But certainly if there's a population collapse, like you can't expect the higher functions of society to continue when there's a population collapse.
Yeah, but even with the notion of like a dark age in Europe over that time period, it doesn't really actually pan out when you look at the actual information, right? There was no like quote unquote dark time. There was no like fucking dark period in history. Like
I mean, Islam was doing well, right?
like people were still like making scientific discoveries, and all of a sudden they say like, okay, well, once we made these certain scientific discoveries, we're in the Renaissance. But like that kind of thing was still happening over that entire time period in Europe. Period.
Yeah. I mean, there was a period, Scott, where people knew how to make concrete, and then they stopped knowing how to make concrete, and then some period of time elapsed, and they learned how to do that again, right?
No. Well, that's the thing. That like those people didn't learn how to make concrete. What it came down to is like it was societal pressures that like made them no longer have the requirement to make concrete, right? So it had nothing to do with like the idea or the knowledge of making concrete. It was the society.
That's just an example of things that an art that was lost and had to be regained later when the population got to be big enough again.
You guys
to where it was worth it to do that kind of stuff.
You guys on YouTube, I'll get to you, Docio. Just make sure you guys hit the like button, share this stream. We're going to be going for a while here tonight. People will be coming and going. If you want to jump on the open mic, some of you look like you want to get on the mic here. You're making some really good comments. Come and join us on Discord. The Pangburn Discord server is for everyone. We focus on fostering good faith, helpful discussions between people from all around the world who have different ideas, some competing ideas, and everyone gets along, and we've built quite the community here. So please consider joining us. It's all free to do this and engage. And if you, speaking of free, if you feel like throwing a super chat Pangburn's way, for $1 or $1 million, however generous you're feeling today, feel free to drop it in the chat. And anyone who does drop a super chat, it will be read out right away, and we will all cheer. And Don will pull down his pants and shake his ass towards the camera. So
metaphorically speaking, with my mind,
metaphorically, right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
since we're on the topic of gods. So if you want to see Don do this metaphorically, drop a super chat. It'll go right.
Literally, if it's over $100,
it'll go right into Don's garter belt. Again, metaphorically. Docio, what did you have there, brother?
No, it was honestly just a little comment. I also read somewhere that for 500 years, no tunnels were built. There's no evidence of any tunnels being built since the Roman Empire fell until like pretty late into the Renaissance.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by tunnel.
Oh, I see what you did there. I understood that reference, Pangburn. That was very funny.
It's hard to miss that one.
I do have that guy to thank for one thing, though, which is without him, I would not know about this server, because his debate with Matt Dillahunty a while ago is how I found out.
Wasn't that an electric debate? By the way, anyone who hasn't seen that discussion, that's still probably my favorite discussion I've ever produced, and that's including considering the Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson series. Dillahunty, being there that night, that was electric. Even backstage, you could tell these guys didn't quite like each other very much, before they head out there. It was electric. John Cena! Yeah.
Travis, who was this?
This was Jordan Peterson and Matt Dillahunty.
Those guys definitely they were just talking past each other. They were there for different things.
For the most part, yeah. Like Matt Dillahunty was dealing with some of Jordan's metaphorical truth claims as though they were kind of like naturalistic claims about the existence of God. And so, yeah, there was some of that, but it was fun to see them work through it. And I think it was a good example of people how, conversations can get lost sometimes. And then, but also there was some wild claims being made that night, and probably, and I have to just outline this, go to the Q&A session. If you don't watch the discussion, which I really think you should, please just fast forward to the Q&A session for the first question that was asked to Jordan. And I remember hearing that sitting backstage. I was just in the wings and I was just like, oh, this is going to be good. And Jordan was asked, so Jordan, based on your interpretation of what God is, if all human beings were to cease to exist right now, would God still exist? And I'm going to leave that as a cliffhanger for you guys to go and check that out. But it's a brilliant moment.
Didn't Matt Dillahunty also come out as trans in that debate?
What?
I don't think so.
No, I might have misinterpreted what he said. But I felt like he came out.
You might be
trans,
thinking about when Matt sat down with D'Souza,
was trolling
because him and D'Souza touched on trans issues. But I really want to get some.
You could find out if he did by going and watching the video.
Exactly, go and watch the video.
I was just gonna. And Matt was trolling a bit in that fucking response.
He was trolling a bit. I think they were both trolling each other, and Dinesh was definitely trolling Matt a few times too. I want to get people in who we haven't heard from. We got Big Daddy Bruce here, who has finally joined us. I knew he was coming. David California, you're new. Welcome.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, what's your general take on the whole God topic?
It doesn't exist.
Okay.
God doesn't exist. I think it's a human construct. I think the math kind of shows that, over 200,000 years there's been 2,000 major deities, and we've pretty much rejected them all. And so if you do a big database and just kind of follow that data, I think it's evident that it's just a human construct. And a couple thousand years from now, we'll reject the gods that we believe in now. I think that time has proven that.
I want to get Bruce's response, but first I need to say, Ian Hamza, thank you so much for the super chat. $2 super chat says, no gods, no masters meant stonemason secrets. Thank you so much for the comment. Keep it up. Let's go. Bruce, what do you think of what David California, aka Robert California, had to say about God?
Yeah, I'm driving, so I'll try and hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah, we can hear you nice and clear.
I can hear you.
So I mean, maybe people don't know. I mean, I'm a believer for sure. I'm a Christian. I believe God is the foundation of all being, who's decreed everything that come to pass. So, I say that I believe in God because of the impossibility of the contrary. If people have a problem with that, then I would say that they're acting as all men act in rebellion. So it's not really surprising to me that people reject God, because that's been the case for a long time. That's my answer, I guess.
All right. Does anyone have any questions?
I love that arrogance.
Can I respond to that? So, I mean, your answer is to say that since people have rejected gods for all of time, that people are going to reject gods, and then you just got to respect the fact that you believe in that God. I'm just pointing to the data of the fact that throughout history, every God that we believe in, and even now, right? I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world. There's 2 billion Christians. So even your chances right now of believing in the right God is statistically improbable. And so, and even amongst the 2 billion Christians, right, you can do the metadata and separate that out onto which beliefs within those denominations that you actually believe. And then you just kind of narrow that down to the fact that your actual belief of what you really believe in a deity becomes super improbable at that point. And then let me just respond one more thing you said, that you basically presuppose the Christian God. Well, all of us, we can only presuppose that our existence is reality. I mean, that's at your base foundation. You can't presuppose anything outside of the fact that you know you're alive. You know, you think, and therefore you are. So if we all start with that basis, then any belief outside of that, any presupposition outside of that is just an add-on. And I think that it's improvable when a Muslim could have that same add-on, that same presupposition outside of the base belief. So if you start at the base foundation of what fundamental reality is basically you being able to think. Anything else is just an extra. And so to me, that's like a bullshit. It's a bullshit response.
All right. Well, let's let Bruce respond, and then we'll, if he wants to, then we'll.
I have a question.
Yeah, let's let Bruce respond, and then we'll go to Andy.
It's not, it's fine. I've heard it all before. As far as this is concerned, we've been recapitulating Descartes since he made his statements. The statements Descartes made presuppose that he even knows what thinking is. He could presuppose unification among all the diversity, and even to prove the fact that he exists to anyone else outside of his own mind requires some shared sense of unity despite his own thoughts. And so people would have to then presuppose that they're all living in the same reality, or they could just decide not to. But, as far as evidence is concerned, we all act as though we are in the same reality. So it's not as if just because someone makes a claim of thought and they say, I'm thinking, therefore I am, that, how are you even thinking and how are you distinguishing anything? So that's the only response I have to that.
It's like a hard solipsist response. Like you can't possibly know, like, am I in the Matrix? You can't possibly know that. There's some things we can't know. Like, how do you know you can reason? How do you know you have intelligence? There's some things we have to make some assumptions with regards to our world and reality.
Very good. I want to get to Andy, but first I want to say Dave just turned his camera on, which means Dave is next. And this is a John J. Parker, our Monday host. It's become quite a tradition that we can't really hear you. We don't understand the language you're speaking unless you turn on your camera. So, guys, turn on your cameras. Show the world your face. Become Insta-famous on Instagram. No, we'll go to Andy first, though.
Dave, you son of a bitch.
So first of all, for anybody who's listening and isn't familiar with what Bruce is talking about, it's presuppositional apologetics and precept. I would encourage anybody to go and watch the debate between Matt Dillahunty and Seitan Brudengate, where I thought Matt Dillahunty committed a felony murder against Seitan Brudengate by destroying the concept of presuppositional apologetics. Apparently, I was wrong, or you're just a ghost, Bruce. Bruce, and you can answer this whatever way you want. I'm just curious. Could you be wrong?
No. Only if God wished for me to be wrong, but no.
So first it was no, and then it turned into only if God wants you to be wrong. So which is it? Yes, you could be wrong, or no, you couldn't be wrong?
No, I cannot be wrong.
Okay, that makes you incredibly intellectually dishonest, and I don't know why anybody would spend any time debating you. Cheers.
Well, I'll respond to that. The reason why we want to continue debating people that we disagree with is because that's how we further the war of ideas and the human condition.
Yes.
If we don't have conversations with people we disagree with, then we're going to find ourselves in echo chambers, which doesn't help anything. Dave,
so, like to say real quick is that Bruce is actually Bruce is someone who's been in the server for a while, and if anyone's had a conversation with Bruce, I would actually find he's one of the most honest people to talk with. It might seem that you're not, but just letting you guys know, Bruce is an awesome guy. Him and I are very good friends, even though we vehemently disagree. And Bruce has definitely changed his mind on topics.
I also want to throw my coin. I also want to throw my coin to
Don. And if anybody is like throwing this at Bruce, fuck you.
Hang on. Hang on. I just want to say to back up what Andy was getting at. I think Andy, we don't need to attack anyone, but I agree with Andy with regards to the absurd position that Bruce holds here. I think it's absurd as well.
I really appreciate the absurdity.
But I'm just using this as an opportunity that I think it's important for us to have absolute patience for our own perceived stupidity, so that we can, like I said, have more discussions going on with people that we disagree with. People, even in cases like some people will like, why would I ever even talk to a flat earther, right? Well, Andy R., who exists on this server, is the exact reason why I talk to flat earthers. He dropped his flat earth belief, and he has dropped his Christian belief. I think he still believes in a deity, but since we've been engaging in intellectual discourse, so I do think this is a positive thing. But I want to give Dave.
Yeah, I kind of agree that there is that line that if you come to the line in the sand that you can't be wrong, you're basically saying, I'm here to tell everybody the truth and what I believe, and there's no way that anything you can say is going to change my opinion on the fact.
I got something.
I can't be wrong, and therefore you should just resign your king at that point.
Oh no,
you've just been put in checkmate.
David, California. Do you believe Bruce's claim that his mind cannot be changed, or that he can't be wrong? Do you believe Bruce when he says that?
It doesn't matter if I believe it. It matters if he believes it.
Do you
believe?
Hang on. Okay, yeah, you believe if he believes that, but do you believe his mind cannot be changed?
If he believes that his mind can't be changed, and therefore, why would I waste my energy in trying to change his mind if he believes that his mind can't be changed?
But you're no, dude.
David.
So listen carefully. Someone says to you, like Andy, I just gave that example of Andy. Andy comes into the Discord and says, I'm a flat earther and my mind cannot be changed. I will always be a flat earther and I will never change my mind. I don't believe, I believe in his conviction, in his current belief, but I don't believe that he can't change his mind despite what he professes.
I hear you. I hear you.
But keep in mind,
the problem,
I want to
Travis.
say one thing. The foundation of science is provisional. So while presuppositionalists say, this is a fact, my mind can't be changed, a scientist is saying everything is provisional and I'm always willing to change my mind. And that is the flaw. That is the piece that presuppositionalists see as a flaw in scientists or naturalists' argument. And that's all.
Travis, I would say, Travis, real
go
quick,
ahead,
I would
Andy.
say that I guess maybe I'm just jaded from spending over a decade inside of conservative Christianity before I got out.
Yeah, that's all good, man.
The level of narcissism that people like Bruce, like Satan Brudengate, who's the Banana Man, Christian apologist,
Ray Comfort.
Ray Comfort. The narcissism that people like that display in any other environment, that narcissism would be labeled as problematic, but because it's with religion, we as a society are told to accept it overall in an overarching.
I agree with
manner.
you that from an epistemological standpoint, like when I look at the epistemology of it all, I think it's problematic from that point. But all I say is I'm not going to throw someone into any human being that gets my full moral consideration into the stupid pile. I want to continue having those conversations because I see that people do change their mind, and they can change their mind. And even if they don't, the pleasure derived from engaging in the conversation with people like Bruce is something I wouldn't change. I wouldn't trade for anything. It's kind of what I live for.
David, California, David, you made an interesting statement, right? So you said, if anybody believes this thing, then you're basically saying if they believe this thing with a certain amount of conviction that they're wrong. But do you believe in that notion of saying that if anybody believes in that with a certain amount of conviction, they're wrong as well? Right? Like, do you see?
I think you misinterpreted what I said. I said
No,
if you've already told yourself that my
Yes.
mind cannot be changed on a particular subject, you've already agreed to defeat in the fact to subjugate yourself to that belief wholeheartedly.
This is a good topic.
Exactly, but within that in of itself, do you think that you've taught yourself to believe that this fact cannot be true, even though it's like even though it has something to do with like religion and like obviously I'm not religious either. But the way you're making that statement is you're saying like if somebody does this and they have this specific amount of belief into it, then it means it means it's not true. But then I see you doing the exact same thing.
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing because I've taken a position that you can be wrong about everything. I've taken a position of default that you can be wrong about everything and anything. Once you take the position in the opposite, that you can't be wrong about something, you have literally walled a part of your brain off into accepting a belief system that you have decided cannot be wrong. And to me, that is a false position. It's a false position on any idea.
No, David, with that, you're actually wrong because you can still fall down that rabbit hole.
Let's go. Okay.
Falls down that rabbit hole.
This is a good. This is a good back and forth. Yeah, Doolittle. We'll get you. We'll get Doolittle to come in quickly here, and then I want to get up to Dave. Dave S. Or Dave. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a question for me that I was supposed to answer?
Oh no, I just thought you had something.
Yeah. So you were. Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess
hold on.
Scott, let's Doolittle go. It's Doolittle.
I know, like I'm gonna let Doolittle go, but Doctor, like the question was, how much does a hen weigh?
4 or 5 pounds.
What's a dick?
Feather.
Yeah, so my position on this whole thing, I agree with Don on a lot of things about what is this whole religion thing. But first, I'm actually, if I have to pin myself down as being a religion or a kind of atheist, I would say I'm a
atheist,
a non-superstitious pantheist. Yeah. So I've had some interesting arguments with Travis where I poke at him with some of these stoicism quotes. Where one of my favorite ones is to blame everything on the atoms is no different than to blame everything on God. And so that kind of sums up my position. So I actually I'm sort of an atheist in that I don't believe that I don't believe that anyone has demonstrated that there's some kind of supernatural spiritual being that is omnipresent and whatever. But if there's this super determinism or just determinism, then that's essentially, that position is essentially the same thing as saying that God, whatever started the whole thing, that original cause, call it the Big Bang or the Big Boing, that's God. That's essentially the same thing as calling that thing God. Now, whether you believe that that thing is conscious, I think that it's more likely than not that there is something that's much bigger than us that's conscious, that's made up of a lot more matter than just us little humans here. And it's likely that if such a thing exists, then its time scale of thought frame of, if you think about what's a single frame of your thought, like how long does that take? It takes like a 20th of a second for you to think the next frame of thought. And this super conscious being, which is more along the lines of the size of the universe, probably has one frame of thought every trillion years or so.
It's
conscious. I think you give consciousness way too much value.
Hold on.
So I'm just saying, but I think it's more likely than not that given how big and interconnected everything is, that there is something really big and conscious, and it might even just be like the size of a star. So I'm willing to give that some thought, but I'm not superstitious. I'm not superstitious about it. So
Yeah, but
I think all this superstition that comes along with religion is essentially, people being in a giant Skinner cage. We have all these random things thrown at us, and we act randomly, and then when we associate our behavior with a positive outcome, we'll repeat that behavior.
Yes.
And if there's an actual causal link between your behavior and the good outcome that you're seeking, then that's an incredibly good thing, and that's how our brains work, and it's a good thing that it does. But also, if you put pigeons in cages and feed them at random times, then they end up dancing and becoming superstitious themselves to try to get the food to come out. And humans are the same thing, and I think that's a lot of what religion is. But also, religion is a way of preserving these thought patterns for future generations. And before we had really great communication systems, writing this shit down in a book was really the best thing that we had to try to convince the next generation that this is how you got to act to not make society collapse.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go Scott quickly, and then I want to get Dave.
I was gonna say, Doctor, like we don't actually need like religion to do that. We can still have stories about Santa Claus, or like these, like the stories of like people tell each other that represent that same thing, that passes down a certain amount of information.
Do you mean with it we don't need superstition about a supernatural being to do this? Or do you mean that we don't need a system of beliefs that we pass down to our children?
No,
like, what are you saying is religion?
Yeah, like we don't necessarily need any of this superstition, right? So
yeah, totally.
But
it does help to have, like, the dumbest among us need to be scared into doing the right thing.
No.
There's no evidence to show that.
No. That's.
Just look at Detroit.
Hold on. That's a very like fucking cynical view of the world of saying. The dumb people need to be controlled.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, you can show me a counter. You can disprove me by showing me all the people that are not reasonable who can be reasoned with.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are plenty of
Scott,
there are plenty of smart people who are fucking completely unreasonable.
Yeah.
Intelligence.
I don't want to get too far off topic here. Dave SP, what are your thoughts on the God topic, or anything you're hearing here?
Yeah, my train of thought switched like 4 times since you started to say we're going to go to Dave now. But yeah,
welcome to the world, buddy.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I don't think that. So it's like I don't know. Like, I guess I just, like, Bruce brought up a form of like presuppositionalism, and I don't think it's fair to just say that he's a narcissist or can't have his mind changed. I mean, to an extent, the whole presuppositionalist claim, as I understand it, is that
This is definitely not a narcissist.
God
Scott,
is
can you
the
mute? We're
necessary
just getting a bit of it.
precondition for the intelligibility of experience. And I think that's definitely wrong. But to an extent, like, if you're going to say that God is the necessary precondition for the intelligibility of experience, then you're also kind of positing that you can't be wrong about that in some weird sense, because it's, I don't know. I mean, there were guys that kind of there were philosophers that kind of posited this idea originally, and I think I think it's really silly. Ultimately, it is really interesting, and I think there's a lot of smart people that are presuppositionalists, even though there does tend to be a gravitation. Trolls tend to gravitate toward the argument, but I don't think Bruce is a troll. I've actually really enjoyed the times when I've talked to him. I also don't like this word that gets thrown around, demonstrate. I don't know what that means really when we're talking about belief in a deity. I hear the word demonstrate. Like, a God hasn't been demonstrated a lot, and Like, I agree with that. You know, like I don't have one in my closet to pull out and show people.
Well, that
But even if
Dave, it's just an objective reality type demand from someone. It's if someone's claiming this object, exists, demonstrate the object, and this is the principle. Science is based on demonstration, of course, right?
Yes.
And science is the mechanism we use to determine what is going on in reality.
I don't think belief is based on demonstration, though. I mean, I think people believe. I think even a strong theist will say that God hasn't been demonstrated. Right? They'll just say that they think that it's more probable that a God exists than doesn't, and I think that's something different than to say that a God has been demonstrated.
I think you've been talking to too many well-reasoned philosophical believers. Like, you can't forget about the people who say, God's Jesse Lee Peterson, God's all around you. What are you saying? He's everywhere. He's in your mind. He's in the love of your children's eyes.
I would even venture to say that the second biggest reason that I've talked to people who believe outside of they believe that the resurrection story is true, and number two is they've had a personal experience.
Yeah,
to me, those are the two biggest reasons. If you get someone to actually break down and filter down to why they really believe in the Christian God, it's usually one of the it's either fear of death or fear of hell. I believe in the resurrection, so I believe that's true, or ultimately, the second one that I just said. So
I just want to make it clear that I'm not trying to make a semantic issue out of it, because it's not about like demonstration versus like plausibility or some like issue of English. I do think that in these kinds of discussions, like the level of proof that the more like atheist-minded people are often after is kind of it's very high, and if the proof or evidence presented isn't extremely high, then the response tends to be that the person presenting the evidence is not presented enough to present a plausible case that can be believed.
Well, Dave,
and I just don't think that standard really applies to
Dave.
I want to believe things that we have evidence for, though.
But this is the thing. I don't care about. I don't care so much about like what someone wants to present as evidence. Yeah. I've been searching my whole life for a single proof, a single piece of proof, not like multiple proofs. Like one claim. Like okay, the claim is God exists. One proof for that. The book is not. Someone might present the holy book as their evidence, right? Or eyewitness testimony written down by someone else. But this isn't proof, right? So I just want, if someone's going to make a claim about what is going on in reality, of course, if it's a conceptual one, like, the concept of love that they've created in their metaphysical substructures they've created this concept of love towards their mother that's different than the concept of love towards their brother. Okay, sure, I'm willing to grant that metaphysical things exist, but if someone's going to claim that a God exists, and I ask them, like, do you mean in reality or do you mean metaphysically? And if they say everywhere, then I just say, okay, show me some proof, right?
Yeah, but
those people don't know.
Can I just say one thing? I just want to say one thing really quickly. It's a really good topic that Dave's bringing up, because most people work under a naturalistic mechanism, and God is seen as supernatural, so it's outside of the natural world. So to say prove God exists, if God's supernatural, we don't have any way of proving anything supernatural.
If someone makes that claim that God exists in this supernatural realm, then my next step is of course just to ask, like, how do you know that such a realm exists? And then someone will say, well, those who were divinely inspired and wrote things down alluded to this.
Yeah, the argument to that is obviously
hold on.
Obviously, in the Bible, there's plenty of times where God is interceded in the natural world. So, I mean, you could say that God exists outside of the supernatural, outside of the natural world. But if God has had plenty of evidence within the Bible of interceding in the natural world, but is no longer doing it, that's obviously problematic.
Now, Scott, go ahead.
David, I could literally say God lives in my balls. Prove it's not true. God is actually fucking alive in my ball sack right now. That's where fucking God lives. Prove
I
it's
believe.
not true.
Be serious.
But here's the issue I'm worried about.
You're not going to be able to disprove that, and that is the fucking
all right, thanks.
fundamental issue.
I'd like to respond to Dave.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, but maybe after I could respond to you, Trav.
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Was that Andy?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
Jason, I just want to point out something that Jason said that is right, but you didn't go far enough, Jason. It's not that we can't prove anything supernatural. It's that we exist in the three-dimensional natural world, and ergo, we don't even know what supernatural means.
Agreed.
How do you define that? What does that actually mean?
Yeah.
I
have no
agree,
method of
it's a
assessing it.
thing to say that.
Let Jason. Go ahead.
Can't it just be metaphysical?
No, it's all good.
Let's go. Wise Ape. Wise Ape
Andy
was
was
trying
right
to get in.
That is literally my point, Andy. You fucking nailed it.
Okay.
Okay. So
ahead,
Dave was. I caught Dave saying something like, atheists demand their amount of proof is so high. Okay, something to that effect.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
So I would say a lot of the atheists I run into, like, they want proof for things like God inspired the 10 Commandments, and those were the best things that he could come up with, or that he parted the Red Sea, or that God actually has these attributes that the scriptures say he has. I mean, or that it's even a thinking entity like described. I think that's not too much to ask for when you're saying prove that stuff, so that was my little thought.
Let's let Dave respond, but then I want to go back to Wise, because Wise has a very interesting story with regards to his journey with religious belief and stuff, and I'm glad to hear your voice, Wise. But Dave, your response?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we should evaluate this question kind of like we'd evaluate any other question. An analogy would be like if I came and said that I'm a proponent
Hang
of
on,
string
Dave.
theory.
Dave, 2 seconds. Scott, you got to mute. We're getting some mumbling.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Go ahead, Dave.
Like if I came and I said I'm a proponent of string theory,
yeah,
and you say, well, I don't really think that's probably not true. Like, I'm not saying that string theory is definitely true or has been demonstrated, and you're not saying that it's definitely not true, definitely hasn't been demonstrated. But what I am saying is I think that I can present enough things that within the framework of reason and evidence should get you to a point where you can say probably string theory is true, in which case you're saying at least there's a 51% chance that string theory is true. And you're saying, no, it's not that high. It's lower than that. I'm not sure exactly how low, but it's lower than that. And we can talk about things like whether or not string theory predicts gravity and what a prediction is and blah, 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 blah. But at no point would either of us ever be saying that, like if you were just to say, like, string theory hasn't been demonstrated, I'd be like, yeah, damn right, it definitely hasn't been demonstrated.
Yeah.
But we would kind of miss, like, all the interesting things that we could talk about. And I worry that sometimes that sort of thing tends to happen in discussions about God.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
Real quick, the big thing that you're missing, though, Dave, I think, is that I understand why you're using string theory, because it's not a proven concept. It still lives in the world of mathematics, physics, the sciences, etc., which all sciences come back to math. So at some point in time, there's a reasonable chance that, just like other mathematical proofs, we'll be able to come up with a proof through our expertise in mathematics, physics, science, and our developments therein. the concept of the supernatural is outside of that concept, which means that everything that we know about it is out the window. But what also means is that it's an amorphous, undefined thing.
So that could make it really hard to.
It also actually goes deeper than that, right? So if you're talking about something that is within the physical world, like we have certain mechanisms to try and have like an understanding or try and measure these issues. With faith, there's fucking no way to measure any of it, period. Across the board, there is never going to be any way to measure a notion of faith, period.
I remember the nature of the claim could make it really hard to ever get to, like, the nature of a particular theistic framework, maybe like a mind, like a supernatural mind outside the I don't know. Yeah. You might say that concept in and of itself, being outside of reality in some sense, is so hard to pin down that it may just be that I don't see how, like, it's almost like a more fundamental epistemological problem. Like, it's almost like some kind of abstract object where it's like, I don't really know how you could use any means that we have at our disposal to breach that kind of plausibility 51% threshold.
And just take out supernatural. Take out supernatural. Like, if you just said something lives outside of our reality, okay, maybe at some point we discover there are alternate realities and we can scientifically evaluate that. I'm okay with that. As an atheist, I'm okay with saying maybe God does exist. I'm not against that possibility, but I have to be provided with some way of evaluating that evidence. And if we say that it's supernatural and therefore outside of any way that we have of evaluating, then I have a problem with that. If you want to say God is part of the natural world, and at some point we're going to be able to come up with a way of detecting God, okay, that's a better argument than saying it's supernatural.
Let's table.
And I just want to say the obvious.
Okay, quick thing from David, California first, and then we'll get Scott in.
I just want to say the obvious too, that theists who then define a supernatural as being outside of us and is therefore the fundamental start of the natural world. Obviously, to an atheist, it's uncomfortable to say that that's the foundation and not go further than that and say that what's the foundation of that foundation. I mean, I don't see why a theist doesn't go beyond that and say, what created the God then? What is the nature that constrains that God in the first place? This is mind-boggling that you stop at it's something outside of nature and that is X equals 0.
Okay.
To me, that's ridiculous.
Okay, great, David. Thank you. Scott, do you have something to add?
I was going to say, like, David, that point that you're making is like a basic point that's been made from like religious scholars for the longest fucking time. That if there is a God that exists, where did God come from? So there be like a pre-God God and a pre-God God and a pre-God God, right? Like
right.
there always had to be something that pre-existed what was going on. But what I really want to get to is like, so Dave, this notion that we're talking about when we say that there has to be some sort of an initial instructor of everything that's happened, right? So basically, I think where Dave was going is he was talking about like the notion of God, and like God was the initial enactor of what is the universe now, right? So
did you say that, Dave?
I can't tell if he's talking about me, Dave, or
who are you talking to?
Yeah, me neither.
No, other Dave, right?
Yeah, no, Dave.
Okay, I don't.
Yeah,
Here,
dude, like,
No, I don't think I said that. I don't think I said that. No.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I was just talking about. Go ahead.
but Dave, you were making the point that you were making the point of a specific caused at some point, right? So the idea of the universe, there was an initial self-caused cause that had no pre-existing cause that created the universe, right?
I don't think I made an argument pertaining to metaphysics. No, I think I was just talking about epistemology, issues of epistemology that I thought were operating here.
I want to get.
I think I'm confused.
We do have a few people that haven't said anything yet. Melting.
Take that epistemology back.
Sorry. Melting Snow. Did you have anything you wanted to add to the God discussion here?
I think it was Jason who said like that it has to be proven like in natural ways, like it can't be supernatural. I was a little bit confused about that part.
I can elaborate.
Go
briefly.
ahead. Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
My only point with that is like
Scott, can you mute, please? Thanks.
Like the so-called methodological naturalism is that our natural systems and science are the ways that we determine what is real and possible in our world. And if you say something is supernatural or outside the natural world, we don't have a mechanism to be able to evaluate things that are supernatural. So if God exists and people say God is supernatural or outside the natural world, we have no way of detecting anything outside the natural world. Now, if God is actually in the natural world, then we have a way of evaluating God. Now, if sometime in the future we come up with some way of detecting supernatural things, and we have a methodology to evaluate supernatural things, I don't know what that would be. Then, okay, great. Then I would consider God as supernatural. But I don't know if we're going to come up with a methodology that evaluates what's so-called something that's supernatural.
And it would be natural at that point.
Yeah, it would be natural at that point.
Yeah, you can take it a step.
Those things would no longer be supernatural at that point.
Go ahead, Lexicon.
Even if you assume God is supernatural, he still has to interact with us to affect any change, and we are natural. That will produce an echo effect afterwards. We would see it as a violation of the laws of physics, and those have never been found to be repeatable or testable in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Neurotic Shrimp, I want to bring you in, brother. What are your
I do want to hear.
thoughts.
Like melting was like trying to make a point.
Yeah.
There.
Thanks for the question, Melting.
Yeah. She was asking for clarity from Jason, and Jason provided the clarity.
Yeah.
Okay. Melting, if you do have anything else at some point, just feel free to unmute. Neurotic, go ahead.
So we're talking about having God as the starting point. So it's like God created the universe, that's the starting point, but like why stop there? One thing I'm relating it to is that we all probably heard this phrase, I think, therefore I am. Now, we can't really explain we can't go that's just a starting point. And you can't really go before that. And you have to start somewhere. And you have to posit something. And so we're trying to distinguish between the supernatural and the natural, how the natural is the physical world with material form, the physical body stuff, and how you claim that God is supernatural or metaphysical, which is not the material world, but something to do with some metaphysical abstraction. And so we have those two things. Now, science deals with the natural world. Science deals with what is hard and fast, but science does not deal with the metaphysical. I don't think you can use science to prove that we have ideas or thoughts. I don't know if you can apply science to that.
However, Shrimp, do you agree that Shrimp? I just wanted to, on your point about metaphysical. Do you agree that clinical psychology, in order to be effective, must wrestle with the metaphysical?
Yeah. We do wrestle with it, and you can apply math to it. Right. But as you've seen, we haven't had great success with it yet. Yeah. But you can try. You could try to use science to apply to the metaphysical. I don't think there's been much success with that yet. There is a problem.
Well, we can build concepts of generalized, we can build models of generalized behavior that is, of course, is born out of, metaphysical underpinnings, right?
Well, so you could use the scientific method to try to apply it to the metaphysical. That's not what people have done historically. historically
Where do
we've
we
gotten
win by
these religious
metaphysical
stories that have
aspects,
appeared.
guys? I'm a little
And I think
confused.
in
What do we
order
mean
to
by
accommodate the
metaphysical?
fact that we are part physical, part metaphysical, and
Yeah.
try to understand the metaphysical aspect of us, we've created these religious stories, traditions, in order to
Mhm.
try to map that out with some attempt.
This is like a dualist
Let's
concept.
go. Let's go to Don Don. Don Don was trying to get in there with a point.
I don't know how. I don't believe I poached the
We're
concept
still
of
hearing
dualism,
you,
although I know
Scott.
what dualism is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some, like the
and
mind brain differentiation.
That's not how I understand dualism, but there is like I think we can acknowledge that there is a body and a mind.
Scott,
Yeah, I mean, I think the
you
mind
mute,
and the brain
brother?
are the same thing.
We're still getting it.
Well, the brain's physical.
Don Don, what did
When
you have there?
God came on the scene,
Yeah, we'll go to you, Wise, after Don Don. I wanted to get Don Don's point there.
Am I still hot?
Yeah, you're still hot, brother. Don Don, can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. I'm just very confused on what people are meaning when they're saying metaphysical. I'm not really sure what you guys are talking about because so just being a little philosophy snob, there's two things that are a little irritating me. One of them is how we're defining metaphysics and metaphysical because it just sounds wrong to me. And the second one, it's not I think therefore I am, is I think I am. It's a tautology. That's it. I always stood metaphysics as the book that came out of after physics. It had no name for Aristotle, so they called it metaphysics, meaning after physics. So
Yeah.
I don't understand what we mean by metaphysical realm, not metaphysical realm. I'm just very confused. So
I
So
interpret
concept-
metaphysics as like not after physics, but like the physical is stuff that you can like measure with a ruler. It has like like solidness to it. It exists in space like concretely. While the metaphysical, like you can't really use it with a ruler. You can't like tap it with your hand.
Yeah.
No,
An idea.
So you're wrong. The idea of metaphysics, which literally means after physics. That's what it actually means, right?
Yeah, but neurotic shrimp is just explaining how he
yeah,
he
that's
thinks
fine.
about it.
As long as I know what he means, I'm okay with what's going on.
Yeah.
So Don Don, and what definition of metaphysics are you used to operating under? Because I usually say, metaphysical things are concepts, right?
Yeah, first axioms. That's what the book After
Sure.
Physics that
Yeah,
Aristotle wrote. It's just it's first axioms. That's what we talk about when we mean metaphysics.
Yeah.
Not immeasurable things, because there's tons of things that are not measurable that
I
we
wanted
can conceive of.
I wanted to ask Wise Ape. Ape, you've had a quite an interesting journey in religion and God belief.
Yeah.
Where are you at now? And maybe give us a summary of where you used to be.
all right, yeah, and what I have to say will lead to that. But here we are, thousands of years after these scriptures were written down, right? And we should be asking ourselves, does that God exist? But when God was introduced in Genesis, he wasn't, hey, Adam, do I fucking exist? It was like, I'm here. There's no fucking question about it. But you know why I'm here? I'm here to have a relationship with you. I'm here to give you some rules.
He throws him into the desert.
So those two things, that's why these books were written down. Not to say, hey, here's fucking proof that I exist, because a book can't prove itself, okay? So the book was written down, the scriptures were given so that you could have a relationship with him, potentially, or have some rules to live by, okay? So, and what are those rules? Men will love them. It's, you're the head of the household, Also, the priest and stuff get special privileges because they are the ones that will see the backside of God. No one else sees anything, Moses might get a glimpse of his ass, but that's about it. Okay, so it sets up a hierarchy. Where I'm at now, I was indoctrinated that, hey, here's your grandfather's last name. You're named after, we continue that in our culture today, getting the last name, a patriarchal thing from our fathers. I mean, that's traditional. And I'm not a big history buff. I did however, read the Bible cover to cover, looking for rules about inheritance. So that's what really got me, because when it came time for my family to pass stuff on, there was all these wives and sisters and aunts and stuff that wanted the inheritance, the guy that I was named after, you know, and they're fucking getting it. And I'm like, wait a second, what does the Bible have to say about this inheritance? It's all about the men getting it, you know. Job did. I did find Job did give an inheritance, a portion of it, from his sons to like 3 beautiful daughters, because they were beautiful. Okay. But you know, the laws were the women said, hey, our father had no sons, let us inherit, you know, Moses. What does God say about that? And God said, sure, you can inherit it since you don't have any brothers, but you got to marry your father's tribe. So that doesn't, so it's very tribal or whatever, but like what really, see, I'm a married man. I had 5 children, because be fruitful and multiply. I took that pretty serious. That was one of the first things God gave rules, you know, if we're talking about this book. But anyway, that was a tangent, but I would like to just point out that God didn't show up on the scene to say, hey, I exist. No, he was there as it was written down, and that it was like to basically start a patriarchy, you know, since the animals didn't, like at first he was like, hey, Adam, you want to have animal as your helpmate? He's like, no, Lord, not okay. You know, so then, hey, go to sleep, grab the rib out of you and make the woman. Oh, you want to have her as helpmate? Okay, I'll have sexy time with her. You know, but so, I mean, we're debating, does this God exist? The one that the scriptures say exists. That's what we're not talking about, like, is there some sort of
deity,
you
know, deistic, because when I talk to these Christians, they're like, what the hell is a deity? I'm like, you don't know what the word deity means? No, I just comes down to a personal relationship with Christ. And like, if that isn't your community, then you may not feel the frustration. But that's very well my community, like feels like my community. Even people I meet, like strangers and stuff, tattoos, drinking, smoking beer, ex-heroin addicts. I'm thinking, okay, that's not a deist, probably. No, man, Jesus is like, he helped me out today, you know? He's the reason I'm standing on the corner. It's bizarre, but
So I'm kind of confused. Does that mean that you do go to the Bible to look for rules? Is that kind of what I heard? Because I sincerely doubt that you follow 99% of the rules in Leviticus. I sincerely doubt that.
Go ahead, Wise.
People always come at me. They're like, if you don't believe this stuff, why are you upset about it still? So there's lingering biases that I have. Like maybe you know, and that goes with a lot of atheists. Like they cling to their conservatism. They cling to their biases against homosexuals and stuff. I cling to my fucking last name, okay? And I'm considering changing it because I'm like, I'm not fucking carrying on this patriarchy. We'll start anew.
If you changed your last name from Ape, what would it be?
Well, human. Yeah, so these apes, okay? Like, so the Old Testament, it really talks heavily about going to sleep with your fathers, okay? You die, you rest with your fathers, okay? You have offspring that carries on you, essentially. That's your fucking immortality, okay? And that comes with that. No, that comes with land.
And I'm lost.
No. Listen.
I know it's in the Bible.
your existence on this planet depends on shelter, food, water, and is a big fucking deal. And if you're going to give someone your last name but not the land, what the hell are you doing? You're one of those dads that just walk away. And I
So
feel like
in other words, you weren't able to prove to your female relatives that the Bible should have given you the inheritance in them. Is that in short what you're telling us?
Oh, they called me a prodigal son. I didn't have much discussion. I've mainly only had discussions with people really involved, but I get so angry over this. Like I don't really.
Was there
I
not
went to a mental. No, listen to me. I went to a mental hospital. Okay, look how stigmatized I am now by that. My dad, they had this intervention thing. They're like, let's talk about why you're so upset, you know? And I said, it's about the house. And they're like, no, we're here to talk about how you how you're getting upset with your wife. I'm like, what? I'm upset because I'm thinking about this house all the time. Jesus Christ, I want to build an addition, 5 kids, they're 8 and under, and you won't put the house in my name. I can't build an addition here. I got to fucking move now. It's cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. I wasn't expecting this. And it was very traumatic. But anyway, my dad's like, what's wrong? I said, it's the house. I'm like, you know, you want me to calm down? Put the fucking house in my name. Okay. He said, you need to go to a mental hospital. I said, I'll fucking go to a mental hospital. Put the house in my name. He said, okay. So I said, let's go. Here's the keys. Let's go. Went there, got out. He's like, nope.
What is the point of this? I don't even understand what's going on.
He's trying.
Tell the story of
He's
where it
telling
came from.
a story about.
I think it's a good amount.
Yeah. Like
I'm thinking I need to go and pop open another bottle of whiskey.
I think
right
you
now.
do. Not that we promote drinking at Pangburn.
Yeah, we should be more succinct.
Let's hear the rest, because Wise's story, he's
right.
got to get it out here. Let him finish up, and then we'll move on. But keep going, Wise.
I'll finish up.
Yeah.
Religion took such a stronghold and carried on for so long because it determined for people family dynamics. It put the man in charge. It allowed certain men to have slaves for so long. Like that was one of the things that kept slavery going, was, you know, giving people the authority to have slaves. And also, you know, like just your I don't know how it makes sense, but the men able to how they were so dominant over women for so long and stuff. It really had to do with if you were smart with your money and stuff, you could pass down an inheritance. That's how they built these large, you know, generational wealth and stuff. So I think that had something to do with why the type of religion we have that's so prevalent. But then there was a lot of changes, like in the early 1900s to the 60s and stuff, and there's now it's all about the heart, you know, like and you know, reluctantly things are getting more liberal. We have women pastors, even though it says in the Bible to shut your mouth if you're a woman and talk at home. You know, ask your husband for advice. Like, I don't know, But why it still persists? It's just because now, I mean, we're like debating, like, does this God exist? And people, they go up against death, they go up against disease, they're looking for things to console them.
I don't exist. I'm a figment of your imagination.
I'm so confused.
Do you exist physically, or
let's go to I want to bring in Snark here, because Snark, last time we talked about gods. Thanks, Wise, for the story. That's epic what you've had to go through there. But
welcome.
I want to bring in Snark. Where are you at now? You were kind of humming and hawing. You might believe in God. You're not so sure. Fill us in where you're at.
I'll put it this way. To me, it does sort of make sense that, I mean, you look at the world, and again, this is so debatable, many people disagree, but for me, I look at the world and it does seem to me like, it's possible there's a higher power out there. Now, whether or not it's specifically Yahweh or Judaism, Christianity, whatever, all of that's where I'm struggling, and I'll be talking to billions of people. And
can you try to describe, Snark, what is that feeling within you that like, if you can describe that, what does that feel like, and what is it, the best way you can describe it, that feeling that makes you believe that there is a higher power, or could be a higher power? And I'm not talking about possibility, because of course I think everyone in this room would say it's possible, but you seem to believe a little more strongly than that there's a significant probability that this is the case.
Well, I could go into like I went last time into a very long tangent here. I don't think you guys want that.
Well,
But
maybe just focus it as much as you can. Maybe a couple
Design,
points on
just one word, design.
design.
so for
That's just one
example,
word.
design, right? You
Yes.
look at the complexity of the universe, right? Existence, and you say, is it possible that all this came out of nothing or whatever it is? And for me personally, again, it's not 100%. Well, yes, clearly, obviously, it has to be that there's this higher power, but it seems much more probable to me.
Can I ask him?
Look
Can
at
I
the
ask you something?
Of course.
Irreducible complexity aspect.
If
Go
you
ahead.
are a being that has achieved consciousness and the ability to question your own existence, would you agree that the fact that you could even question it, and that you exist in a world with physical nature, that you would automatically think it's designed for you? And in other words, there's billions of species on the planet, right, which have their own environments that they live in, which fit them perfectly, and yet they don't have a mechanism to then question whether that environment is designed for them. Do you then therefore think that the only difference between us and an ant that lives in its own perfect world is the ability to question and reflect, hindsight 2020, that the design looks like it was on purpose?
I feel like you said two things here. I feel like you said, first of all, you spoke about the differentiation between human beings and any other living creature, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, to this topic, I think what you said is irrelevant. I mean, it's possible. It's definitely possible, but at the end of the day, I'm sitting here right now, right? I've lived. I'm very young, but I've lived a bit, and the complexity of what I have seen so far, to me, right, makes me feel there's something we don't get. There's something. Clearly, we're missing a piece of the puzzle here, and the only answer that sort of fits that piece is a higher power.
Can I
Right
ask you a
now,
question?
please do.
Same time. So you couldn't take in, randomness, probability. So the probability of the event, intelligent life would emerge in this locality of the universe. Wouldn't you take that up as in your probabilistic framework? Because it seems like your probabilistic framework is more like 100% to 90% creator, and that's all it is. So, because if
I
you
didn't quite understand the question. Sorry.
Can I maybe rephrase that? Because it
so
seems like
if
what
you
you're
look at if you look at an infinite universe, right? It's no surprise that in some locality in that infinite universe there would be conditions necessary for intelligent life.
Yes, but please, in that notion, what's being missed is what Snark is saying has nothing to do with like in any individual fucking aspects. He's saying that the notion that there is a creator is more it makes more sense than there is not a creator, right?
No. That's not.
That's
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
He is kind of saying that.
He's saying
That's absolutely what he's saying.
right. Yeah, but what I'm getting at is he seems to be just considering that he seems to be making that event that the creator is the cause of all this.
This is
as
like a
the
God of
only
the
thing.
gaps discussion.
Right. Yeah,
It's like
so
the
like
beautifulness of the world. It's so complex. It has to be a creator. We don't understand this complexity of the world. That's the gap. We don't know what that is. We're like, it must be a creator. And so I would say, can't we just say we just don't know? There's some things that at this point we may not be able to explain certain levels of complexity, but that's not a reason to believe in God. That's what I would say.
The convincing thing for most people, though,
describe the feeling of
100%
looking at the cosmos and recognizing design or something like that, right? I mean,
that's the evidence most people purport is the feeling. Like, you would expect that there would be Greek gods running around. I mean, Jesus Christ had a fucking body, for Pete's sake, you know? But the only evidence, like a lot of these believers can present, is the feeling they have, something that you know, imagination also blooms from the mind.
Reason is a feeling.
Give me something else more than a feeling. Well,
reason is a feeling. If you're presented with a real, and that's the point I was going to make, right? What's the feeling like?
You need to always be conscious,
postmodernism for the win.
You need to always be conscious of the fact, though, that your own feelings, without being reinforced by objective facts,
it's
are
not
just that, feelings.
Really,
like
postmodernism.
We can be wrong.
Of course, you can be wrong, but like if you're presented with a really compelling argument, like maybe it's like an analogy or it's a really good metaphor, or you're given an example where it's like, aha, you finally get what the argument is or why it's so reasonable, why what you're saying, the other person is saying makes sense. It is just a feeling. It's an intuition towards something that's reasonable. And I think that the feeling that you get,
like if you I'm sorry to interrupt. If you look at the night sky or something, like it's going to make an impression on you.
It is, yeah.
But what would a non-designed universe look like to you? And especially in a universe where if you live in a world where everything is great for you right now, it seems to be complex and designed for you. But if you really take a step back and look at the universe, it is chaotic, and it is death, and it is destruction, and there is disease, and there has been extinction events. There's been times when humans have almost been extinct. It doesn't seem designed for a good portion of the universe. It seems very chaotic. So to me, the design argument is not a strong argument.
Dave and David, could I go and encourage us to take a step back before we approach what would an undesigned or an undesigned world look like? Which is
can I make a point or claim that the religious or God, whatever that's dealing with, is not dealing with the physical, but is attempting to deal with the metaphysical. And so what you would see material in the world
to some people, yes.
How do those two terms make you feel?
You guys,
designed makes you feel good. Undesigned gives you like not a good feeling. So anytime the designed argument comes up, it's going to elicit in some people like, oh my God, I feel God. Like this is giving me a good feeling. This must be true.
Hey guys, hang on. You guys hang
Jodie
on.
Foster
Andy
says in the movie Contact when they send Jodie Foster to like the extra dimensional world and she's like the uber scientist. And she says what? They should have sent a poet. That was her explanation. Keep that in mind. Great movie.
Love poetry, by the way.
Let's let Andy. Thanks, Rob. Let's let Andy finish what he was going to ask there. Go ahead. Or the point.
So this conversation seems to be kind of predicated partially on the idea that the world has any semblance to a designed world. Let's talk about that. That needs to be talked about and unpacked. 70% of the water that we have available to us, we can't drink without it killing us, just from salt content. Never mind the toxicity of the of fresh water. we're not an apex predator without our technology. Take your technology away and put you in a room with a lion, and I'm going to go and bet on the lion 100 times out of 100.
Because of the metaphysical that we own, we are the apex predator.
Those things don't have to look designed.
Again, I'm talking about just looking at the world and in human with us as an animal compared to other animals.
But here's what I do think we're designed.
He's talking about complexity.
Yeah,
I was
so when
talking
I
about
say-
complexity, not design
Yeah, I
for
was
us
gonna
specifically.
say-
Complexity.
I'm not even talking about
the
complexity.
world,
I'm
the
talking
world is.
about-
I just described it just with those couple of things, just with our climates, and if you think about humankind without advanced technology, not being able to easily, and in some cases at all, exist outside of small portions of 30% of our global surface.
You
What
still have
part
laws
of this
that govern
globe?
it.
What part of this
I'm not
world
attacking the
even
point.
looks
I'm really not.
remotely, and I mean remotely designed? If it
And,
was
and you're only a
if it was
three-dimensional
designed-
creature.
Hold
You're
on,
only a three-dimensional
I'm about to
creature that
finish.
can only see in
I'm
three
about to
dimensions.
finish. I'm about to finish. If this world looks like it's designed, I want my receipt so I can go and get a refund.
All right.
Right, so
Well,
when-
I don't
just
know why
quickly-
you think designed necessarily means really amenable to you living a really nice, easy. Like 70% of the water's toxic. I don't think that. I mean, when I was trying to make my point earlier about what I think looks designed, which I never got to make, it wasn't going to be that the water is so thirst quenching, most of it on the planet. And nor was it going to be how most of the climates end up killing us. Those were not going to be the things I was going to present as plausibly designed.
Yeah, you can design defenses and boundaries and booby traps. Those things are designed.
Well, the question that was originally proposed to Snark was, what's the feeling like when you look and you see the design of the universe? And I think the answer is it's like looking at a really good analogy. Like, I'm a software developer, so like when I look at some parts of it's just for me, when I look at some parts of the code of the universe, so to speak, what the fundamental equations are that govern the way everything operates, the simplicity of it, as opposed to the complexity, does kind of seem to me as though it's the sexiest API I've ever seen, where it does everything in 100 lines of code, and I can understand it, and everything kind of follows from it. It does seem like those are the moments where I look at that, and if there were a really strong theist making the argument that the universe was designed sitting next to me, I might say, yeah, I do see what you're getting at when I look at this kind of. It does actually seem very simple in the way that I would design a program to operate.
If the code was simple and designed, you wouldn't be wearing glasses right now.
No, that's not it. So
I think that's actually the opposite. I think
You can design
wear
obstacles.
and
So what
fix
he
it.
means
I
by
think that's exactly
design, what he means by designs are like the fundamental nature of the universe. Things like mass
Does that
can't
work?
travel faster than light. Things like
We are electric man. We've got electric hands. So come stand beside us and realize that the thing we must do is inspire. We're coming for you. We're coming for you. We are electric man. It's inspired. We're coming for ya.
The same thing. We formed in that universe because of its nitrogen-focused environment, and we're like,
It's like
I don't know,
deterministic argument.
non-carbon life form, whatever. I mean,
Which I hate deterministic arguments.
Like the puddle.
It's one of those.
The puddle.
So Jason, so because Jason, I find you engaging, and that's a compliment. I promise I'm not flirting. So I have a question. I'm curious to get your answer, and I think other people are gonna lose their minds. Hopefully, everybody just mutes and just lets you answer first, and then everybody else can pile on.
I'll be short.
All this discussion for the last, I don't know, however many minutes. What does any of this fucking matter on the practical level to us?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think these are good discussions
Strive for the greatest
intellectually
metaphysics.
to like kind of think about why we exist, its relationship to the world around us. People have these thoughts around unknown things and explanations of unknown things, and coming up with formations of ideas of why something exists or why we exist. And when we don't know something, we fill in the gaps. That's what our brains do. It looks for patterns and things, even if there isn't a pattern. I think that is the takeaway for this, is that from a religious perspective, when we don't know things, sometimes it's better to say we just don't know, as opposed to saying God exists. Like, the universe is so pretty, it had to be designed. What if we said the universe is so complex and is beautiful, but you know what? We don't have all the answers. I guess God could exist, but we have no evidence to suggest that. So until such a time as that happens,
you're dodging
I reserve
the question.
those thoughts on that. I
The
don't know if that was
question why is this
I have to go.
practical?
I was really enjoying it. Bye.
Thanks, Trent.
Look, I want to, Jason. Like, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It has political and real world consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
If we're gonna say that this God exists, and the way we can know Him are through these texts, and let me tell you what the texts say. The texts say, stone the homosexual to death, and it's about control. So on a practical level, it's going to determine what type of society we build.
Well, yeah, the fact that the evangelical lobby is one of the biggest lobbies in the United States. They lobby support for our control of geopolitical dominance in the Middle East. It all derives back to Israel being the home state and really the start of Christianity. There's huge geopolitical ramifications for believing in a God that doesn't exist, as well as education in the United States, Australia, and England, and so forth. The education that keeps going, teaching people about young Earth creationism as a viable substitute to evolution and actual natural sciences is a real world problem.
No, it's not. It's not.
I totally agree about the
losing their
questions
minds
of
over Santa Claus and Zeus.
Yeah. In the actual world, this is not an issue.
Yeah, and California Dave, I totally agree that there's on the practical side, those discussions absolutely matter. I'm just not sure that we need to go. You can go down the road of kind of the last 30 minutes of discussion to go and get into those sorts of questions. I'm not convinced that you need to, if that makes any sense.
You don't. Yeah, there's no precipice to fucking have that need. Really? I mean, like this.
Elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, there's no precipice to have the need to get rid of these notions of like a flat Earth or like these really like wild fucking conspiracy theories within the academic world. Like it's just not something that's actually happening.
But people are believing these things. I mean, there's been a resurgence of people believing very crazy ideas. The flat Earth topic is a good one because in the last 5 years, there's been a huge surge of people believing in it.
Yeah, but
That's fine though. Like that, some people just fall into that.
But that's the thing. Like people might also believe drinking bleach is gonna be good for you.
Or that they're anti-vax, or they don't believe in climate
Yeah,
change.
Scott, Jason's just saying this is what is going on in reality. Like we have people believing this.
That's
right, and it matters what people believe.
That's right. I'm saying this is what's going on in reality.
Yeah.
So real quick, Jason, I think that you're right about your. So it's interesting. There's two things that are right, but you have to have the right thing, the right tool at the right time. I think that the discussion of whether there's good reason to believe this sort of stuff, like the Abrahamic religions, is one topic, one discussion, and really important to have. I don't think that the slide. So I'm not sure where you're getting that people are more believing in this now more than ever, because all the metrics, at least here in the United States and most other countries that I've seen, show religiosity sliding in the Western world. Now, I don't know about the rest of the world and what's going on in small countries in Africa. I got nothing for you. But at least where it seems like most of us are from, which is either Central Western Europe or North America, religion is shrinking. I don't think that religion is shrinking because of the fact that people are having these kinds of big discussions. Do I think that some people find their way out of religion because of that? Yes, absolutely. But the reality is that most people, I think, and it's hard to prove this, are finding their way out of religion for a variety of reasons, more so around the cultural aspect of the lunacy of the concept.
And you might be right about that in terms of religiosity. My only point is that the issues of people believing or latching on to very fringe ideas, and maybe that's a small set of people that I have seen, my own personal perspective in some of the research I deal with in terms of cognitive dissonance and with regards to social media, that there has been a surge of people being able to isolate themselves into tribes of where they can reinforce their views of like white supremacy or flat eartherism or young earth creationism or anti-vaxism or anti-climate change. Now, or belief in God, but radical beliefs in God. Now, it may be that religiosity is shrinking, but what I think is happening is these fringe groups are becoming more radicalized because they can get together and they can feed off each other, and that's very dangerous. And education is a component of this. And in America, when you degrade your education system to a point where people are easily malleable, and that their minds are easily swayed by their own groups that they are identifying with online, then that can be dangerous. And I see that, and I lump religion into that. But I would agree with you that maybe there is like a decrease in religion.
I'd like to.
It's interesting, the radicalization.
But Jason, even with that notion, right? So do you think there are less people who are indoctrinated into this like wild fucking idea of like Christianity nowadays than there were 50 years ago? Right. So it seems to me. I'm sorry, guys. I'm on Ativan tonight, so I'm like fucking like running a bit slow and fucking.
It's all good, man.
Yeah, dude. Like,
how are you feeling?
I feel weird right now, dude.
Yeah. That's okay. Just chill out, and we'll. I really wanted to get Kapowski. Kapowski, I just want to know your general. What has been your journey with belief in God or the God topic in general through your life?
Hey, yeah, thanks for asking. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Coming through great. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, okay, well, sure. Yeah, Well, I grew up Christian, and sorry, I really wasn't prepared to talk
No
about
worries.
this. So, yeah, so basically, I just came to I struggle. So for a long time, I struggled with the idea that in order to go through and be really true to the religion of Christianity, that I would have to actually believe, really, really, truly believe it in order to get the benefits of, I don't know, heaven and eternal life and all that. And I couldn't get over the doubt that I had, because there's so many things about this religion that were, that didn't make sense. And eventually I finally did had the opportunity to actually study some of the ancient texts that led to the creation. There were some of the ancient texts that were a part of what became the Bible, and in college, and it really helped make everything very clear to me that there was no reason for me to be caught in this constant struggle of wondering, should I commit, can I possibly commit to this religion that I have these doubts about. And it made it very clear to me that there was no reason to worry about that, or to really take this as a serious possibility, because there's just no good reason to believe in an Abrahamic God. There's no good reason to believe that these texts were anything other than man-made. And I just I just don't see any reason to think that there's any divine inspiration behind any of it.
Of course. Like Kapowski, within that, what was it that actually made you see the differentiation of saying, like, here's what people are saying, and you just need to have faith in it? Where was the actual point that you broke away from it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that it was just, I want to say that when I was taking a theology class in college, there were probably a lot of little things that really, just everything I learned, probably almost everything I learned in that class, just looking at it from a really analytical, academic type of perspective, in a really academic way, just put everything really clearly into perspective. And the thing that stood out to me at the time, which was quite a while ago, was learning about this big fire pit that existed, that was literally a trash dumpster, giant dumpster heap. And I, excuse me if I don't know the history of all of this very well. I haven't studied this since college, but that is an example of something that was sort of this reality that they lived in, that influenced these texts. And it was just another example of things that were very much real to these people at this time that were writing these texts, that seeped into the writing in various ways, that became, to people looking at it much later down the line, had this mystical meaning, because they didn't understand the origin of it. When we can examine it now from an anthropological perspective, we can see that the reasons behind it were such a part of our reality, such a part of our physical reality, and not divine or supernatural. So, things like this fire pit that sort of became this idea of hell that morphed over time. Things like the flood, that was obviously just the Nile flooded, and it was a big deal, right? The whole world didn't flood. So Just all of this, you can see there's all this evidence of how these texts came together, and there's if you can see the real world evidence that influenced them, that has no obvious divine inspiration.
Oh, thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much for that.
don't gloss over the point that like this causes psychological harm to people because they can't buy it hook, line, and sinker. People spend a lot of time like having internal dialogues with themselves, thinking, is this spirit or is this voice from the Lord or from God? When really your brain just shoots out a lot of stuff. I guess that's my claim, but reasons to suspect it's tied to a god that makes a donkey speak, or has a fiery pit somewhere to put people in. I mean, that's a leap.
I want to hear from Mace Starwalk. Of course, is our Friday show host, and his show "Convince Me Otherwise" has been a greater improvement, I would say, to the Steven Crowder show. What is it? Change My Mind. But Mace, where do you currently sit on the God topic? Do you think there's some usefulness to believing in the existence of gods, even if you can't demonstrate them? Or do you think it's a load of bollocks?
I currently lack any belief in a god, and I find religion to be a useful tool in the same way as any kind of manipulative tactics that one might use.
Yeah, that's something I always thought, ever since I was a little guy, kind of hearing about religion and belief in God and things like this. I always thought, so if I was a soldier, I always imagined myself as a soldier I was being given a sword, and I'm being told by my boss that go out there and kill another guy with a sword. You're probably going to die too, by the way. I was thinking that this is probably going to be a lot easier and a lot more fun if I believe that, the Holy Land awaits me, heaven awaits me, if I do fall on the battlefield. And then I started thinking of it from a king's perspective. If I was in charge of the people, what a powerful message this is. If you could convince your people that, God was on your side and you were carrying the holy sword while you were out there. Oh man, now I'm all charged up. I want to get out there. Maybe it's my day, that I will fall. But, the difference between someone fighting with a sword in their hand, believing that heaven may be awaiting them if they do happen to die, that might be a little extra confidence to make you lunge when someone less brave wouldn't lunge, and maybe you'll get a few more kills out there.
There's definitely utility in believing in God. I mean, obviously, God is a poor man's therapist, right? I mean, anytime that you have a problem that you can't work out, you can just say, you know what, I leave it up to God.
I thought Jack Daniels was.
Well, that as well. But I mean, there's definitely utility in being part of a tribe, for example, a part of a tribe that agrees on something. You build community bonds. Yeah. You may go further ahead in life with your community because you believe in that thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but is there utility in personal truth? Absolutely. There's placebo effects. There's utility in that. And we see it all around us. Actually, the majority of the United States is still somewhat believes in God. You can't really get elected to, high office being an atheist. It's literally impossible in the United States. So there's lots of utility into believing in a God. It's just not true, in my opinion.
Go ahead,
Andy. Well, it can be used as a manipulation tool too for good. Like it could make somebody a really good bricklayer. Hey, I'm not going to pay you a lot for laying those bricks, but if you do this into servitude of God and worship to God, then God will look kindly upon you. So they'll be like, holy shit, I'm going to lay 100 bricks today.
Mm. Go ahead there, Andy.
I was gonna say my favorite captured in cinema with at least some level of documented truth to it of what you described of people getting fired up and it's our God and their gods they're all heathens. We Were Soldiers, Mel Gibson playing Colonel Hal Moore of the 7th Cavalry before going off to Ia Drang in Vietnam, and he's there with a soldier in the chapel of a hospital. And he closes out his prayer. By the way, I forget the exact wording, but it was something along the lines of, let's make sure that we just help us go and carry out your bidding and let's kill these fucking bastards or like these heathen bastards or something.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, to yourself, well, that's really funny because the fact that Buddhism and Taoism are predominant religions in Vietnam, communism or otherwise, and it's been that way for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Yeah.
So
you find a lot of pacifists there too,
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that goes back to the Buddhist tradition.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, at least I guess at least with Buddhism it's a kind of a weird that's a janky one. These people do believe in some form of a God or higher power. So you're saying that your God is better than theirs. How do you know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, these are. I find these conversations to be fun when a theological representative from one side versus the other theological representative, and then they kind of are having this big cock off between their gods. And I think a lot of us, I'm sure, have dabbled in looking into Greek mythology and how these gods used to quarrel. And I always imagined Ares versus Zeus. Yahweh.
I mean, have you watched the Avengers? This is basically what this is.
Exactly, right? I mean, Thor's right there, man. Yeah, totally. But there is something entertaining about these. I guess you could call them archetypes.
If Thor existed, would you say theists are right or atheists are right?
If Thor exists? Well,
exactly the way he exists in the comic. Exactly.
Yahweh already had a battle like that with staffs that turned into snakes, and then then the fire, the sticks that were wet, and Yahweh torched the sticks for whoever that guy was. And
I want to hear about Thor.
Dave
after the people lost,
only about
the Israelites or whatever then slaughtered all the the people who lost.
But here's an interesting point, right? A lot of people who claim to be Christians, they believe in Yahweh. If they want to know, and this has been echoed through the so-called new atheist movement forever, just go one God further. If you want to know what it's like to be an atheist, just think about the way you think about Zeus, right? As a Christian, you don't believe in the existence of Zeus. Think about the great Juju on the mountain. You don't believe in the great Juju on the mountain who born out all human beings.
They believe in the Juju on the mountain that gave rocks to Moses. That's the only difference.
I'll tell you what, Travis, that right there, I have said that to pastors before of a few different faiths. Yeah. They don't like hearing that. They don't like that reminder.
Yeah, usually what people respond with to me, that's whenever you can find in these argumentations where you frequently get a response of faith, that's usually when I know if a pastor then says, no, at this point I just have faith that I have the right answer, right?
Dave, to answer your question about Thor, it depends on which movies you're talking about. If we're talking about the Thor as he's presented in the mythology of the Norse sagas, from Vikings, or even keyword loosely, The Last Kingdom.
No,
yes.
Hemsworth.
Yes, absolutely. But when you're talking about the comics, first of all, in the comics, that Thor is a total demi, so I don't know what we're going to do with that. But Can
I ask the question a different way then, actually? Because I've been thinking about this for.
Oh yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Because that was kind of like a. But imagine it's the year 6000, and we find out that the ultimate explanation of the fundamental thing that exists is basically the Force from Star Wars, and it's the explanation for everything. It flows through all life. There's a will, like there's the will. It's kind of like a mind because there's a will of the Force, and you can like obey the will of the Force and align yourself with the will of the Force. But it's also kind of like a sciencey thing, right? Because you can kind of like control the Force, but it's the fundamental thing that exists. And the atheists might say, "Ah, look, we figured it out. It's just another law of physics." Kind of a weird one, but they were getting pretty weird anyway. So we're right. But then the Christians might come along and say, "Hey, actually, like, it's pretty much a mind. It has a will." Jesus was basically Anakin before he turned into a dick. Like, he was like a fatherless manifestation of the Force in human form. Like, who would be right in that situation? And is God natural there? And does it matter that God's natural in that scenario?
It kind of only gets you to a deist position, just like presuppositionalism.
But deism there's a God in deism.
Yeah, there is a God in deism, but I mean, it depends on how you define a God.
Wrong. So that would, I mean, are atheists right in that situation, or something more like a God exists version of theism, like some God exists? Because we were talking earlier about, how is God outside of reality? Is he inside of reality? If he's inside of reality, is he a natural God then? Well, I can see this situation being true. That's one option as far as I'm concerned, that something like the Force exists.
Yeah. Well, if you,
well, you have to get Christians
sorry, go ahead.
To present something that would make their religion falsifiable. Like, when is Jesus going to return? In the year 6000, is that enough time to say that he's not going to return? Do we have to wait a million years? Like what is the falsifiable claim for Christianity and Judaism? Is there is there going to?
But I'm really interested. It's not a trick question. I just want to know like how you'd evaluate like. Is that a theistic or atheistic scenario?
I would say to that you can replace the word force with universe. So when does it become a difference? When it becomes in your mind kind of like supernatural, and then if what you said about the force being somewhat natural, is it then natural? So then really, what is your definition of a God at that point? Is God just merely something supernatural that was the fundamental start of the universe? Or can it be a natural start of the universe and then it's no longer a God if it's a natural fundamental? So to me, positing force in there is like positing the word universe in there.
Well, I'm saying the Force, the version of when I say Force, I mean exactly the way it is in Star Wars. So people can be the son of the Force.
Yeah, but why would Christians posit their belief on
the Force has a will? The Force is basically all powerful. It's the explanation for everything. Like you've got most of it. Basically, is a Force.
Why would
Jesus,
Christians jump in at that point?
Why would a Christian jump in at that point?
Yeah.
Because most Christians
are claiming are more.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to say, "Look,
I have to just throw my hand up real quick, bud. It's an interesting philosophical discussion, but I don't think that it really. Again, what's the point here? Where do we get ourselves to? A amorphous. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Hard to pin down something. I don't see where this gets us to anything useful. This is masturbation for the brain.
The utility of God is being able to live forever and not go to hell in the mind of a Christian. And so regardless of even if you say that there is a deity, it's not a personal God that's punishing you or sending you anywhere. It's not a God that you're seeing and actually interacting with. And is doing anything for you in your afterlife, and so therefore it might as well be negative. It might as well be nil and not exist. It's like an absent father. It's like your mom saying, you know what, you have a dad that lives in Australia right now, and he wants you to follow every freaking rule for the rest of your life. You're not going to get to see him until you die, and then after you die, you get to see your dad, but you have to follow all his rules.
Okay, there's a Forrest Gump reference here that we cannot miss. Didn't Forrest Gump say to his mother, "What does vacation mean?" And then she says, vacation? Yeah, where Daddy went. And then the mother says, vacation means you go somewhere and you never come back. So he was
I
walking
do
around
want to
his
press
whole
though
life
that I don't think
thinking,
anybody's like actually answered the question right. Like,
No,
if
I'll
I'm an
answer
atheist,
it.
right?
I'll
I think
answer it right here. Right here, I'll answer it. You know where it comes in helpful? You get your community back. Because as
I didn't ask
atheists,
if it was helpful.
you're
Like, I'm
excommunicated.
sorry. I'm really
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
I feel like an
Repeat the
asshole. But like,
question.
so here's the question, right? And I'm just not like, gosh, I'm really curious. I was thinking about this like an hour ago. If it turns out that it's like the year 6000, and through scientific advancement and science and philosophy and spiritual whatever, blah blah blah, we find out that the fundamental explanation for the universe and reality and the thing at the bottom is basically exactly the Force from Star Wars. It's exactly like that. And then the question is like, how do you evaluate that world? Is that a world where atheists got it right or where theists got it right? Because the atheist can say, well, it's part, because we talked about like natural versus supernatural and blah blah blah. It's like, it's part of reality. It's basically just another law of physics. We can predict it. We can manipulate it. You can use it. It's basically a law of physics, just a bit weirder. But they were already kind of weird anyway, so who cares?
Okay.
But the theists are going to say something like, "Wait a second. This is analogous to a mind in exactly the way we've been positing something analogous to a mind. It's got a will. You can obey the will.
No.
The Force."
You're missing
Just
the theology.
just 30 more seconds.
Give him 30
Because
more.
I'm positing the theology. This is the theology, right? And I'm asking how you evaluate this theology. It's got a will. It's got you can align yourself with that will. The Force can when you die, you can become one with the fucking Force. There's a Force of Jesus. It's basically Anakin before he turned into a dick. Like they can say Jesus was Anakin. Jesus didn't turn into an asshole. And I'm just wondering, like, I could almost see.
Was it a dick or an asshole?
I think he's somehow managed both. I mean, he was a dick.
The theists are wrong if there are no streets of gold. So that they're wrong in that sense. That in that scenario, they would be wrong that there's no streets of gold. Everybody doesn't get a mansion when they die. Things like that. Those sorts of claims would be wrong.
But if I say I believe that a God exists, and that's true, am I wrong right now? Like if that ultimately turns out to be true, and I say I believe in God,
your definition
God
of a
is the
God
necessary,
is one who
all-powerful explanation for the universe, and it's kind of analogous to a mind in a sense that it has a will, and I can align myself with that will.
Seems like a semantic discussion.
God doesn't require
I'm curious
10% of your earning then, does he?
Hang on.
This is called mental masturbation.
I want to get I think it
philosophy is mental masturbation.
No, I like where Dave's going with this. I want to take a quick break from it. Everyone keep thinking on Dave's question, but we haven't got Uncle Rob's take on the God concept in general. Uncle Rob, do you think there are gods out there or a God? Do you think these things are man-made? What do you generally think about God?
Yeah, I remember tuning into Mace Skywalker's "Convince Me Otherwise" the other day, and just kind of taking it in more. Like, in all reality, a lot of times, like these discussions, someone had said it helps to alleviate the cognitive dissonance of not knowing, so we we create gods and stuff. But I think also that our hubris as thinking individuals is creating these conversations where everything must be measured, and if it's not measurable, therefore it does not exist. And I think that if that's the mentality, then you'll ironically always be kind of, I don't know if wrong's the word, but you'll never have an answer because you're always searching for one, and therefore like the whole existence of God debate is
that's the fucking point though. Is like you always need to be searching for an answer.
What's wrong with not knowing though? Like if we're trying to measure something, we can't measure it. What's wrong with saying we don't know?
Exactly. Yeah, people shit their pants when they have to say that for some reason. It feels like some people feel like it's better to believe in something than nothing at all, like this idea. But when it comes to certain questions, it's just like saying I don't know is perfectly fine, and we should get used to this. Oh, by the way, here we go.
It's a cop-out, though.
Why is it a cop-out?
I just want to...
Well, it's a cop-out because the conversation is, theists are saying, I think probably there's a God. They're not saying they know. They're not saying they don't say they don't know.
Not true at all.
They're not
Some of
saying
them
they
say
don't-
they know, but most of them are going to say, I believe it.
The definition of a Gnostic
Saying the
theist.
streets of gold.
You guys, 2 seconds.
All right,
We
look,
got...
All right, there are some people.
Okay, we got Canadian Catholic finally joined us. I hope he turns on his camera. Time for some rock and roll here.
Oh shit, here we go.
Canadian Catholic, always happy for when you stop by, man. You guys go check out his YouTube channel. It's rock and roll. If they search Canadian Catholic, is that what it's called, brother?
Yep.
Oh, okay, cool. Do you want to just lay out how you feel about the God topic, what you believe in, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, I do think that, I mean, what do you mean what I feel? I'm a Christian, so I'm a former atheist, and I do think that there's good reasons to think that a God exists, I guess.
Based on what? What is your basis that you think God exists?
I think there's many reasons to think so. I think the best that I would argue is kind of inductive reasons. And we can take the kind of world we live in and see, well, what is consistent with what. We can, for example, see that we have pretty good reason to think that there is some kind of a necessary first or fundamental cause, depending on how you want to phrase it. And we have good reason to think that, and we see, for example, in the world, a couple of things we would expect on a God hypothesis, something like teleology, ubiquitous religiosity, beauty, a bunch of things.
Yes.
Does that lead to you to believe that God had a chosen people? Does that necessitate that?
When also for him, he's literally not making the argument that says like a Christian God is correct.
Scott, we're hardly hearing you, man. I think the Ativan is
it's
heavy
dude,
on you.
It's fucking hitting me hard right now. Holy fuck!
Kick back. We'll handle this.
Well, I think that anytime, a lot of times, it's when a theist.
Yeah, let's let him finish. Let Scott finish.
Yeah, the place that you're going is what you're saying is that you don't necessarily believe in any specific religion.
Oh, I do, yeah.
But the religion that has the impact is the one that has more, I don't know, philosophical turpitudes, right? So
No, I didn't say anything. I don't know what you're saying. No, I didn't say anything like that. I didn't say anything about that. I'm a religious person. I'm Christian.
Well, Canadian Catholic, so you defend your God belief. Like, it seems like you move the goalpost. Like, you talk about all this, like, deistic properties, but then, like, what necessitates, like, how do you defend that concept, like
deistic.
God had a chosen people, that, he
You're wrong.
became, stuff like that?
So, first of all, this is actually the problem with you, Mr. Wiseape, and not just with you, but many other people, because I want to apologize in advance when I'm going to say they refuse to think, and please don't take that personally, but I do think it's refusal to think. So the first thing is it's not deistic. That's a problem, right? People seem to think that anytime somebody talks about a God without talking about a specific religion, that's deistic. No. A deistic God in many ways is the one that doesn't interfere with the universe. And if what I said is correct, then that's the opposite of it. There's teleology, there's ubiquitous religiosity and beauty. That's interaction with the world. So it's a theistic God. Now, on your point, the conversation has to start somewhere, right? And when a conversation starts somewhere, something is obviously going to get omitted. So, for example, telling me, well, you've given me a reason to think that God exists, but you haven't given me reason to think that chosen people are there. But I mean, I can't talk about everything at the same time, because when I talk about chosen people, then we're going to admit Jesus Christ. And when I talk about Jesus Christ, we're going to admit the Holy Spirit. And when I talk about, so what am I supposed to do? Like give you a preaching lesson? It's like a catechism lesson or something? I started from
We can
somewhere.
start with
I
a
wasn't
simple
trying-
one.
I
What's
didn't-
what's beauty? What's beauty?
I was
Don't understand
That's an
what
easy
Catholic
one.
is saying.
Well, you don't even need to go into what's beauty.
Yeah, and you
So
can't
the
claim that
ubiquity
beauty
of
is theistic.
so is it like the complexity of nature, the ubiquity, what you see around you is what is why you think that God exists? Why does God exist?
Yeah, but if you're a religious person,
Just let Canadian answer this.
I don't
Not
know.
Christian, just why does God exist?
What do you mean? Why?
Or give me your best reason why God exists.
I think the kind of world we live in is more likely on the God hypothesis.
So it's a probabilistic argument.
Well, an inductive one, yeah.
So it's given
not
the world that we
theistic.
live in, it's more likely that God exists. That's your argument, or that's your position.
Yeah, well, that's the one I'm defending right now.
All right.
It's not theistic.
I
Not
have to
theistic.
I have to
You
I
just
have,
said
I
you
have
had
to
theistic
I have to throw it
argument.
out there that assuming that your religiosity ties back to your name, Catholicism.
Yeah.
How can you look at the behavior of church leadership from the Roman Catholic Church for the last upteen couple thousand years, and especially the last, I'll call it our modern time. You and I are probably both close in age. I'm mid-30s. You're probably somewhere in a similar, up or down a generation.
I'm
How
22.
can you possibly?
You're 22.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a generation behind me. How could you possibly find anything of value in the Catholic Church, which is principally speaking a criminal enterprise and a criminal organization, organized crime, and that's been documented with the church sex abuse.
I don't know. Actually, I don't understand the question, to be honest, because the question is, how can you? So, what does that mean? Like, how can I be a Catholic? You just go to the church.
Well, because the Bible advocates that children are property. You can sell your daughters. You can have sex slaves. You can have concubines. That's why.
No. Listen to the argumentation that's being made. You ask the question of how can you not care? Listen to his argumentation. He does not fucking care.
Yeah.
And like he really does not. He fucking gives no fucking shits about whether fucking children are being molested by fucking
Who doesn't care, Scott?
I think it was
Canadian Catholic.
Yeah. Like,
do you agree with that, Canadian Catholic?
Well, just because there's pedophiles in an organization does not mean that the organization is not true.
Exactly.
They're just saying why? How can you be a Catholic? But I don't know if this is relevant to the discussion. I mean, we could argue about that, but it's
I don't
a
actually
big rabbit hole.
So on the one hand, I guess can somebody mute Big Lebowski because he's not going to let anybody else talk. Big Lebowski, can you let other
You ever talk people? So whatever.
Big Lebowski, can you let people talk, please?
Yeah, let's try to go one at a time here. So
So
you can respond.
on the one hand, I don't know who asked the question. On the one hand, I don't actually understand the question. Like, what does it mean? How can you be a Catholic? Like, go to church?
You understand the question.
You understand?
Yeah, you absolutely understand
You're being passive aggressive. You absolutely understand the question.
I can only speak for what I understand. I can't speak
you guys. If he's going to ask clarified questions, let's answer them, even if they again have patience.
I do think I made a point.
There can't be a conversation if Big Lebowski isn't going to let anybody else talk. It's not going to be a conversation.
So Scott, you gotta mute in between, man. We're getting a lot of like you trying to get in, and it's fucking up the flow here.
Sorry.
So Catholic, go ahead.
So on the one hand, I guess I don't understand the question because like when somebody says, "How can you be a Catholic?" Like What does that mean? Like, what are the steps to becoming a Catholic? How you participate? I don't know. I mean, I go to church.
No, why wouldn't you renounce the faith?
Because I think it's true.
So I mean, he's essentially Andy is essentially saying, given all you know about Catholicism and its past history of Catholicism, how can you be a Catholic? Here's
how it can still be true.
How can you be a Catholic?
How can you justify being a Catholic?
True? That the authority figures are fallible people. Is that how it's true? They claim to be filled with the Holy Spirit, to be speaking for God, to be leading their congregation, but yet they're fucking boys on the side, underage people. Like, just because they got a sin nature, is that how it can be consistent with you?
I think this argument's not going anywhere, because asking how he can be a Catholic is like asking a Mormon how they can be a Mormon.
Yeah, you guys. The question is not like okay. Let me ask it this way, Canadian Catholic. What do you think about, for example, the abuse that some priests have carried out against children?
I mean, what do I think? Like,
do you think it's wrong? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it's representative of the Catholic Church or
I think all sexual abuse is wrong, child especially. So I mean, I don't have any special view. I mean, I have the exact same view, but I find out, I don't know, that what's his name? Some other abuser did something.
Yeah. Okay. So you think sexual?
If I found out that Jason Thorne was abusing his children, I would be very upset. I mean, given his face, it's very likely.
But
what did you say? Given my face,
he said if he found out that you were abusing children, let's try to listen here. He said that if he found out that you were abusing children, he would feel the same about you abusing children than if he found out a priest was abusing children. Now, the other part, Catholic, that everyone's trying to get at is, do you think that any of this abuse, which seems to be rampant amongst priests in the Catholic Church compared to, some other organizations, maybe like Black Lives Matter as an organization, right? Hasn't been around as long, but I'm just saying, there doesn't seem to be this problem. Do you think there is something where those particular priests are falling away from God, or are they carrying out God's will, or what do you think's going on there?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't studied the issue of child sexual abuse, to be honest. So I can't say what causes people to abuse. Like, if I found out suddenly that Jason Thorne was abusing children, right?
He keeps bringing me up because he doesn't want to. Because he want to have this conversation with me. So
that's weird.
That's fine. You can keep saying that, Canadian. You keep ducking the question.
By the way, have you guys had conversations before?
I have, but I don't like Canadian Catholic. He runs his mouth a lot online. I think he's got problems. But whatever.
We all like each other.
Okay.
Let's turn this back. Let's turn this back into his belief in God.
I'm happy to
rather
debate
than
you sometimes,
what denomination.
Why would I want to lower my IQ by debating?
I don't know, Canadian. Are you in college?
No.
How far along are you?
Please, you guys.
I'm just curious.
Scott, I can't hear anything when you're making sound, brother. I can't.
Yes. So I've got a great question to propose. Canadian Catholic.
Okay.
So if there was something like what level do you think it would be okay for a priest to molest a child, for them to have some certain information that they got from God, right? So
I don't know.
Where
I'm working with
a priest had to molest a child to this certain point for them to understand what God actually wants from them, right?
I think Catholics he's already said that he is against this kind of abuse, right? I don't know.
He said he's not.
He said he's against the abuse. He's against child sexual abuse.
His actions don't match. The actions don't match the words. to say that you're against it, but then to have no knowledge base of an obvious fact. The only thing worse than that, Canadian, is like my Catholic ex who just flat out denied that it happened, or that it was something that had been found internationally in the church. Sex abuse in the Catholic Church.
So you guys
I got one more point that I want to make, Travis. Hold on, Scott. I got one more point that I want to make. It's bringing up other organizations. Hold on, Canadian. That there is a big difference between the Roman Catholic Church and other organizations, both religious and irreligious, like Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter has no centralized leadership. It's a decentralized movement. With the exception of certain parts of the Baptist churches or the assemblies, there's some loose federations like the Southern Baptists, but they're not led by a pope, so to speak, across the denomination. The Catholic Church is entirely rotted out from the top down, and the entire pool of candidates to replace the current pope, who at this point in time has been proven to have known that there was sex abuse happening in Argentina while he was in charge in Argentina. There's a reason why for the Catholic Church and for the Catholic to sit there and say that they don't have any knowledge about it, or that they find it disagreeable, without tearing the goddamn walls down of the church organization. It's just hypocritical. It's purely hypocritical.
It's absolutely.
So I was deaf, so I couldn't hear you. Andy, are you done now?
Go ahead. Did you? But you gotta listen. You gotta listen, brother. If you gotta engage in a conversation.
So Andy, I'm gonna say I had you deafened, so I couldn't hear you. Are you done now?
No, you can't do that. That's bad faith. That's a warning.
This is what this guy does.
You can't deafen people. You got to listen.
He doesn't know how to have an actual discussion like
I
this. He can
understand.
only make snarky responses.
He looks like a monkey. Why would I not just
Look, man. Hey,
guys,
Canadian, you're always
ad
asking people
hominem,
how tall you
that's
are. I'm
number
worse.
two.
How fat are you?
You
You're always
guys-
asking people how tall they are.
Guys, we don't do that ad hominem attacks here.
Hey, man, he's
Stop.
done this all the time online.
I
I'll
understand.
have your response.
That's outside of
Jason, let me have your back. Hold on, Travis, Scott, Jason, let me have your back. Canadian, your behavior, even if I thought that there was a stone chance in hell, which there isn't, that your religion, your denomination, your faith was valid. Canadian, I'm speaking and I let you go before. I let you speak. It's now it's my turn.
I don't want to listen to your lectures. Is that okay?
Hang on.
So then leave. You're in an open discussion.
Okay,
You're in an
I want
open
to
discussion,
you guys.
bro.
I'm pulling moderator here. I'm the moderator. Hang on. I want to hear from Andy and
Doesn't stop. He's been talking for 10 minutes nonstop.
No, it's not 10 minutes. It's only been 20 seconds. I've been counting in my head.
I don't care about your opinion. You're an idiot.
Can I just interject and say, you know what? There's lots of organizations that have either corruption or abuse within the organizations. There has been rampant abuse in the Boy Scouts, but yet people still want to be Boy Scouts. And saying, you know, if Canadian Catholic has a cognitive dissonance about the fact that there's abuse within the organization he belongs to, that's no different than having cognitive dissonance about any religion that you belong to.
David, I'm not interested in you defending me. I'm not interested in you defending me.
California, okay, fine. Canadian, then
I do think that this question,
you guys, everyone, we got to go one at a time, or else we can't hear anything. So
California, I'm going to go and respectfully disagree with you. Here's here's the reality. You are 100% right about the Boy Scouts, which is why I would never support the Boy Scouts. By the way, the Catholic Church in the United States, the Roman Catholic Church, multiple dioceses across the United States, one of the largest supporters of the Boy Scouts. So you've got two rotting from the head organizations tied to each other. You should not voluntarily be part of an organization that has metric fucktons. And that's an actual denomination right there. Actual metric fucktons of rot in it. You should not voluntarily be part of that. You wouldn't want to go and join an employer who has a 1-star review on Glassdoor. Why would you choose your religion like that? And if you get argued into religion as a person like Canadian just presented, you should not be making that decision, because you should be looking at that person who's espousing Catholicism or Mormonism or saying, hi, we should think that your son little Johnny should join the Boy Scouts. That's probably
I'm gonna play the role. I'm gonna play the role of a Catholic that knows nothing about the horrors of child abuse. So I don't know anything about that. I condemn it, but I still feel as though I want to keep my religion, because in the way I interpret the religion, there is no use for that kind of abuse. And that doesn't represent the Catholic Church, even though, there might be people up at high levels of control moving around, pedophiles. That has nothing to do with me. I'm a Catholic for my own reasons.
The local level.
I think, if I may, I think he left, but
he did leave, yeah.
And he was. I mean, look, that was not the most efficient conversation around Catholicism, but look, I do think the question is kind of. I mean, if you say asking how can you be a Catholic with all the sex abuse in the Catholic Church is kind of like asking, how can you be Canadian when Justin Trudeau is killing people's pets? It's like, what do you mean? I live here, I vote here, I believe in democracy and Western values, and I think the Canadian Charter rights are all very good. I think Canadianism is good. Justin Trudeau's a cock and he has to go. Both things can be true. They don't have a lot to do with each other.
Scott,
Scott,
I can't hear him, man. You're mumbling into the mic. I can't.
I'm sorry. Justin Trudeau is not killing any pets, right?
I mean, all Canadian Catholics had to have done was just say.
He's trying to make a different point. It has nothing to do with the validity of these claims either way. He's just trying to make a point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or a better, easier one is
you seem like you're great to talk to, but if you're taking a trip on the van right now, you might want to think about maybe going to bed, buddy. Just an idea.
No. I took 2 Ativan for panic disorder, and it's fucking
you up.
It's hitting me weird.
Yeah, just maybe just take a little break there, Scott, because it's becoming. I'm not able to really make out what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah.
But can I just make one point? Is that Canadian Catholic came on? I think the only point about Catholicism was asking him about these issues. You're a Catholic, but there are these issues within Catholicism. What's your perspective on that? And he wouldn't even answer that. All he had to do is say, it's abhorrent. I don't acknowledge that. I refute type of behavior in Catholicism. It needs to be removed. And there's been this past issues, but I denounce that. If he'd have said that, people would have went up. Yeah, but
Jason, he might believe he doesn't owe you that explanation because it has nothing to do with him. So you're attributing, you're saying that it has something to do with him because he happens to claim to be a Catholic, right? But he might not see it that way.
I'm not saying it has anything to do with him. I'm just saying that he is a Catholic. It's in his name,
right?
And there is that stigma associated with that. So it's
like asking a billion people why are they Muslim when Muhammad, had sex with a 9-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, we do this with Islam.
I just think there's
a perfectly valid question to ask anybody who espouses that faith. Your faith is rooted on a person who raped a small child.
So you're assuming. Hang on, you're assuming that he agrees with you that is his faith. He might believe differently, so it's better. Faith. No, hang on. He might believe in his mind, go into his mind for a minute, regardless of what you believe, you gotta try to understand the phenomenology of your interlocutor. He might believe in his experience that has nothing to do with Catholicism. I'm not saying he does believe that, but say you were having a conversation with someone that just was completely absent-minded, just didn't think they had to apologize for anything because that has nothing to do with their religion, even though you believe it does. I'm just thinking that when I approach conversations like that, I'll treat the person as an individual, and I might ask them about that. Like, I might ask them, like, what do you think of all this? Like, why do we have so many pedophile priests, and why did Catholic, churches systematically move these pedophiles from point to point, so where they continued molesting children? Because I've spoken to a lot of Catholics about this outside of churches, and a lot of their responses are, I know that's been happening, and I know that that's been a problem. I don't want anything to do with that. Some of them say that. Some will say, well, yeah, that's just, gross people breaking the law. And some might not even talk to me. Some don't talk to me. They just say, like, oh, you're one of those guys bringing that up. They just don't talk to me. They don't owe me. I don't feel like they morally owe me outrage if they have nothing to do with those crimes. If they believe that they have nothing to do with those crimes.
So I'm going to go and respectfully push back, Travis.
Sure.
First of all, if you, especially with the Catholic Church, if you are a Catholic and you are a tithing Catholic, the money that you put into the offering plate has been used, proven, to go and pay for lawyers for the Catholic Church to fight back against having to pay awards to victims of abuse.
But that's not why they put the money in the bowl.
That's immaterial to the fact that that's how the money is being used, and that is open knowledge. It's covered in the media.
Sorry, man. If you put money, if you're an old woman and you're going to your Catholic service, and you put a few dollars in the bowl, if you're saying she's guilty of funding pedophilia,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you
you're
don't
saying
understand.
impact matters more than intent.
It's proven. It is a criminal organization. The media coverage of this subject for the last 20 years. The media coverage of this subject for the last 20 years.
You don't have to argue that to me. I understand how bad the issue is. That's
so if it's that bad, you cannot participate in the organization without being supportive of that dollar that you put into the plate being broken up and being used to relocate priests to less law enforcement driven societies.
If that bowl, and here's how I'll demonstrate this to you. If that bowl said support the rapists, if it said that, support the rapists, put your money in, do you think those people would put their money in if they knew?
No, but that's that. I think that escapes what's actually being trying to be the point that's trying to be made right now, because like you're saying is like if somebody emits or gives money to a church and that church uses that amount of money for something that's negative, right?
It's a composition fallacy. I mean, you could apply the same to any group.
Somebody brought up in the chat.
Hold on. So all of a sudden that church is like responsible for that negative benefit of their money going to some sort of thing, right? So we can look at the United States government and like how much of our money goes to
drone strikes.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, so
yeah,
like
that's a good example.
Andy, even I know you're a big supporter of these trucker convoy protests, right? And this money, you wouldn't suggest that donated money was donated because people wanted to see these protesters break the law.
Yeah,
no, absolutely not. And I also think that even based on what I was reading exactly what you're claiming. I was reading a summary article, Travis. On Scott, on buddy. I was reading a summary article of all the quote unquote crime that they were breaking up with the truckers from. Is it CCTV or CTV? It's Canadian TV or something like that.
Yeah.
And just reading through, they seemed like they were semi-lefty, not conservative. That's for sure. And they had like five crimes out of 50, 70,000 individuals. And one of them was like jaywalking. So
but hang on. I'm just
here's the difference between what we're talking about, though.
Yeah, sure.
Here's the difference between what we're talking about. You're talking about taxes that if you don't pay, government comes, kicks in your door, and hauls you off to prison. Especially Canadian Catholic, he voluntarily has converted to Catholicism with all the knowledge of what has been going on in the media that has been in the media and in the mainstream discussion of the Catholic Church and the rest of society here in the West.
No, you're
almost his entire life. If he's 22,
yeah, but I don't know if you see the bias at play here. But I think
there's a bias. Yeah,
I think you are engaging in a bias here, and I understand. Like, I think your fundamental argument is that child rape is much worse than blocking roadways. You're not going to have me being able to morally argue against that, and I appreciate that argument. But I think, the same way that people are donating to these trucker rallies, how they're not necessarily funding unlawfulness willingly. A lot of people would donate just being like, yeah, I want to make sure you guys have the resources you need to peacefully protest. I think if you go into most, Catholic Church services, and I've been to a lot of them, when I talk to people about this, they just, they're still donating to their church, but they're doing it because the church might be organizing a mission to somewhere in, Central Africa or something like that. They feel as though they're giving to good things, not to things like, child rape. But I, it's not lost on me how important it is for the law enforcement to investigate and criminally charge anyone who's been funding or helping to move around pedophiles that have allowed them to amass more victims. And the Catholic Church has done this, and we've demonstrated this. And, this is something I would say, if I was a Catholic, it's hard for me because I've never believed in any of this kind of stuff. But if I was a Catholic, would that steer me away from being a member of this organization? Yeah. I mean, I would say it might not make me stop calling myself a Catholic. Like, if I'm trying to put myself right into this, it might make me stop going to church and going to these gatherings. But if my faith was strong enough, perhaps I would still be Catholic. But
probably wouldn't want to say it either,
you might feel weird about it, or maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you would say that Catholicism has nothing to do with those evil people.
Depends on how you feel.
There's a fair question and there's an unfair question, right? And this is the problem. This is the problem when he came in, right? Because the fair question is, if you're a member of the Catholic Church, and especially if you're tied into the Catholic Church, are you at all concerned that your money is being used to propagate an organization that covers up pedophilia? And there's probably pedophilia somewhere right now that they're covering up.
Okay.
And you are contributing. That's a fair question to ask.
It's a fair question to ask, and I'll play the role.
Here's the unfair question.
I'll play the role of the Catholic. I'm in actor mode right now.
But here's the unfair question, and this is the question that I think he interpreted you guys to be asking, because, and this is an online conversation, it's not lots of questions are poorly formed, but I think it was a poorly formed question.
Right.
He interpreted the question to be, well, how can you sit there and think that Catholicism is true when the priests are, and that is like asking, how can you think Michael Jackson, king of pop?
It's like an attack on an identity.
It's like, well, I mean, look, Michael Jackson his songs are the best. Yeah, I feel weird playing. people are over there now. Like, I don't really want people to know I listen to Michael Jackson's music because he's kind of a pedophile and that's weird, but his songs are kind of the best. That's not really have anything to do with, I mean, it's just, they're just different questions, the different truth conditions for different claims.
Right, it's genetic fallacy.
But but you know,
Somewhere, yeah.
this is you know, it's a tough one. It's like this, fundamentally what we're talking about is how much can you be associated with another entity until you, and how bad can that entity act until you don't, until you feel like you kind of have to form your own entity. And I would say that this is kind of a microcosm for how religion split up in the first place, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
like
that's how we get different groups.
Yeah.
I call this
I
supply
love
chain
that.
ethics, actually, because normally what's happening is someone, like a vegan's making the argument that, yeah, you don't torture animals, but when you buy a chicken breast at Walmart,
Right,
it was probably
exactly.
given to some. And I just find this argument, like, I don't know what to do with it. I don't think supply chain ethics is like a valid ethical concept. I mean, if I did, I probably couldn't be using any silicon device because coltan is only mined in the Congo, and it's basically slave labor. I mean, I couldn't buy anything, really. I basically have to be a subsistence farmer like Henry David Thoreau or something. I just living like in a pond somewhere. So I don't think it's a viable
supply chain
concept.
ethics actually do fucking have a matter of.
God, man,
I had to give
you're
Scott.
on.
I'm just giving Scott the just a break for a bit here. Let's we have had such a great audience here tonight, guys. There's been some excellent conversations going on in the chat. All of you who are new, if you're not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing to the channel. Did I miss a super chat, by the way? Let me scroll up here. If I did, I am sorry for missing it. Maybe not, though. I don't think I did. Maybe that's just because it was a $2. Oh, okay, cool. Yes, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be live tomorrow with Zemo's show. Zemo always picks a philosophical topic. We will be live here again, same time, same place. Please do join us. I haven't heard from Zemo as to what the topic is tomorrow, but I always look forward to his stuff. Andy, Dave, do you guys have any closing statements here? Lexicon, Melting Snow, Hypno?
No, just it's very nice talking to you guys. Really appreciate the conversation. Thanks to Trav for hosting again. Congratulations on being remonetized. Justice has been.
Hey, we won one, man. It feels good to win one,
guys.
Yeah,
no, good for you. Seriously, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was. Guys, Celebration of Science and Reason Tour is coming to Canada in April. I am organizing. I haven't announced this yet. I just put out our little poster image. We're going to do a Science and Reason rally downtown Vancouver at Robson Square. I hope you guys come out. I'll be handing out flyers for the Celebration of Science and Reason Tour, and we'll be hanging out. And I've made clear in the one ad that I just put up that no unlawfulness will be welcome at this thing. But I'll be shooting some film that'll be this Sunday, so it'll be a lot of fun. Thank you, Jason, Scott, Roski, Dave, Andy. Thanks everyone. Let's head down to the tavern if anyone has any juice left in them.
I do. Could you drive me down there?
Yeah, I will. You lazy bastard. Drag me down there, he says. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, and let art and science inspire.